I started the night shift the way I always did. Coffee in one hand, headset in the other, half awake, but pretending I wasn't. Dispatch is never as exciting as people think. Most of the time it's noise, drunks arguing with invisible people, prank calls from kids who sound like they just discovered the word, but wrong numbers that shouldn't even be routed to us. Still, I like the quiet of nights. The way the buildings seemed bigger when no one was walking around. The hum of the fluorescent lights. The soft blinking of the monitor screens. It was like the whole place had settled in for sleep, and I was the only one awake. That night was no different. At first, it was just me and Dale on shift. Dale was older, one of those guys who'd been doing the job for decades. Half his life spent in this dim little room. He didn't talk much unless you asked him something. And when he did talk, he sounded like gravel. Around midnight, Dale took his break. I sat there alone at the console, sipping coffee that was already lukewarm, scrolling through the CAD screen. Nothing active. A few earlier calls resolved. That's when the line rang. It was a crisp tone in my headset, sharper somehow when the room was this still. I clicked to answer. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. I repeated it. 911, what's your emergency? Still nothing, but I thought I heard something faint. I leaned in, listening hard. It was breathing. Slow, steady. Inhale. Exhale. Not rushed, not panicked. Just there. Sir? Ma'am? Can you hear me? I kept my voice calm, like we were trained. If you can't speak, make a noise, tap the phone, anything. The breathing didn't change. I thought maybe they had the phone in their pocket by mistake. It happens more often than you'd think. Listen, if this is accidental, I need to know so I can free up the line. Can you? The breathing got louder. Not much, just enough to tell me they'd move the phone closer to their mouth. I froze for a second, then checked the screen for caller ID. No name, no address, just unknown number. That was strange. Can you tell me your name? Nothing. I muted my end for a second, pulled up the tracing software, and keyed in the number. The system spun for a bit, then spat back something I'd never seen before. Location, unavailable. That only happened when the call was coming from somewhere out of the network range, overseas, or from a number not tied to any carrier. But 911 calls are supposed to bypass that. Even a dead cell should give me some kind of ping. I unmuted. If you can't speak, I'm sending help to the nearest location I have. The breathing stopped. Just dead air. Hello. Silence. Then a faint scrape, like something dragging across the mouthpiece. Not a harsh sound, but a small one. Deliberate. The hairs on my arm stood up. I was about to mark the call as unable to assist when the breathing started again. This time was slower, heavier, and I realized it was matching my own. I tested it without thinking, took a deep breath, slow, all the way in. On the other end, the breath matched. Same length, same pause. I sat there, my mouth dry, not sure what I was supposed to do. I wanted to hang up, but protocol said you stay on the line as long as possible. Is someone there with you? No response. The breathing shifted, faster now, then slower, like it was experimenting. Like whoever it was wanted to keep me guessing. I typed a quick note in the CAD. Open line. No voice. Breathing only. Unable to trace. Just in case Dale came back and wondered what I was doing. Then, without warning, I heard something else. A word. Not spoken loud. Barely a whisper. Hello. It was so soft, I almost thought I imagined it. Hello? Can you hear me? This is 911. I can help you, but I need you to talk to me. Can you hear me? I froze. They repeated me. Not exactly, but close enough. Yes, I can hear you, I said slowly. Yes, I can hear you, the voice echoed. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a prank call. The tone wasn't playful, not like the kids who try to mess with us. This was flat, like they were just repeating words without emotion. Who is this? Who is this? I yanked my headset off for a second, heart hammering, but the line was still open on the screen. When I put the headset back on, all I heard was breathing again. I was halfway through typing another note when Dale came back in. Problem? He asked, seeing my face. I shook my head, maybe too fast. Just weird call. No voice, just breathing. Dale nodded like it was nothing. Happens. Probably some drunk who thinks it's funny. He sat down, started sipping his soda. The breathing continued in my ear. I should have disconnected. I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to prove it wasn't a drunk. Or maybe I wanted, I don't know, some kind of ending to it. Then it changed again. This time the breathing wasn't matching me. It was ahead of me, like they knew when I was about to inhale. And then, so faint I thought it was in my own head, I heard it. I'm here. The voice was low. Male, I think. But it wasn't the word itself that scared me. It was the tone. Like someone telling you they'd been behind you for a while, and you just noticed. I hit the mute button and whispered to Dale, I think this guy's in trouble. He just said he's here. Dale gave me a look. Here? Like, here in the building. I unmuted. Sir, where exactly is here? Can you give me any details? Are you in a house? Outside? Are you safe? I'm here. Same exact tone. I'm muted again. It's like he's stuck on a loop. Dale shrugged. Hang up. You're wasting your time. But my finger wouldn't hit the button. Because just then, the breathing changed again. It wasn't steady anymore. It was closer. Louder. I checked the volume. Hadn't changed. Then I realized why it sounded closer. There was no phone distortion. No tiny static hiss that always comes with a call. It sounded like someone was breathing right into my ear. I jerked my headset off again and looked around the room. Dale was scrolling through a report, not paying attention. When I put the headset back on, the line was dead. Call ended. I stared at the blank space on the screen for a long time, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. Not until 2 hours later. Same number. Same unknown on the screen. This time, I let it go to missed call. But here's the thing, and maybe it was my imagination. When the line stopped ringing, I swear I heard a soft, steady breath from somewhere behind me. After that first call, I thought maybe it was over. I convinced myself it had to be some weird fluke, a bad line, maybe even a glitch in the system. Stuff like that happens. Phones misroute, towers hiccup, strange signals cross. You tell yourself it's all explainable because, well, the alternative is too strange to even think about. I kept telling myself that for the next couple of hours, until the second call came. It was about 2:16 a.m. Dale was halfway through some story about a DUI crash from years back when my line lit up again. Same number. Same unknown. My stomach tightened. I answered because that's the job. 911, what's your emergency? Breathing. The exact same slow, steady rhythm as before. I glanced at Dale. He was pretending not to notice, eyes fixed on his screen, but I could tell by the way his jaw shifted that he was listening. Sir, or ma'am, I said, if this is the same person as before, I need to know if you're in danger. I can send someone. The breathing didn't change. I pulled up the trace again, fully expecting to see location. Unavailable like last time. But this time, I got something. A set of coordinates. I copied them into the map software, and a tiny red pin appeared in the middle of a pale green patch. No roads. No buildings. Just an empty field outside of town. It didn't make sense. No cell tower close enough for a clean trace. No reason anyone would be there at this hour. Can you tell me if you're outside? I asked. No answer. I muted my line and called over to Dale. It's coming from an empty field off County Road 17. He frowned. What's out there? Nothing. It's literally just open land. Dale leaned back. Could be a cell bounce. Location data's not perfect. The breathing suddenly stopped. My screen flashed. Call ended. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath without meaning to. 3 minutes later, the line lit up again. Same number. 911, what's your emergency? Breathing. Same coordinates. It was too exact to be random. Same spot, down to the meter. I started logging each call, noting the exact times. 2:16, 2:19, 2:22. The interval was perfect. Every 3 minutes. By the sixth call, Dale finally swiveled his chair toward me. You should report it to the shift commander. I nodded, picked up the phone, and dialed the night commander's line. When he answered, I explained the situation. Unknown number, repeated calls, same GPS location in an empty field, breathing only. He was quiet for a second, then said, log every call. If it keeps up, we'll send someone to check the field. But you know what this probably is, right? What? A ghost number. Sometimes a carrier messes up, and a disconnected number gets caught in a routing loop. It pings 911 even when there's no one on the line. Then where's the breathing coming from? I asked. He didn't answer that part. just told me to keep logging. The calls kept coming. 225, 228, 231. By the 10th call, I could almost predict when the phone would ring. I'd watch the clock, wait for the hand to sweep around, and there it was, sharp tone, flashing light, unknown number. I thought maybe I was getting used to it, until the 11th call. This time, after I answered, there was a faint new sound under the breathing. A crunch, like footsteps in dry grass. It was quiet, far off, but I knew it wasn't my imagination. I've lived here my whole life. I know what that sound is. Are you walking? Are you hurt? Can you tell me what direction you're headed? No answer, just the slow rhythm of steps under the breath. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. I muted and told Dale. He didn't look thrilled. Still the field? I checked the coordinates. Still dead center in the middle of it. No movement on the map at all. When the call ended, I stared at the countdown to the next one. My heart was racing now, not from fear exactly, but from the strange expectancy of it. Like I was waiting for something to happen, and I didn't know if I wanted it to or not. 3 minutes later, right on schedule, it rang again. This time the footsteps were closer. Hello, I said. I can hear you walking. If you're in trouble, I need you to speak. Breathing. Steps. Crunch. 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 Then, so faint I almost missed it, a whisper. Almost there. I sat bolt upright. Almost where? Where are you going? The breathing slowed again, like whoever it was had stopped moving. Hello. Click. Call ended. Dale glanced over. What did they say? Almost there, I said. My own voice didn't sound right in my ears. The next call came at 2:43. This time the whisper came sooner. Same 2 words. Almost there. Then again at 2:46. Same words, but a little clearer. By the 15th call, I realized something. The voice, it sounded closer each time. Not just clearer, but more present. Like the distance between us was shrinking. And then, during the 16th call, I swear I heard something else under the voice. It was faint, buried in the background, but it made my blood run cold. It was my name, whispered, drawn out, almost like a sigh. I didn't tell Dale that part. I just wrote in the log. Name used. Caller, unknown. The next call didn't come. I sat there, staring at the clock as the minute hand swept past the mark. 3 minutes passed, then 4, then 5. The relief I thought I'd feel never came. Instead, I felt uneasy, like I'd been abandoned. At 2:58, the line lit up again. Same number. I answered, my voice lower now. 911. What's your emergency? Breathing. Crunching footsteps. Then the voice. Here. Just that one word. I checked the map. The coordinates had changed. The pin wasn't in the middle of the field anymore. It was right at the edge of it, the edge closest to town, closest to here. I muted the call and showed Dale. He swore under his breath. That's not good. Think it's a person? I asked. He didn't answer right away. If it is, they're moving fast. The call ended. 3 minutes later, new coordinates. A little farther in. Toward us. I felt something shift in my stomach, a slow, sinking dread I couldn't explain. I'm not a cop. I'm not trained for the streets, but I've taken enough weird calls to know when something's wrong. This was wrong. The 20th call came at 3:07. The pin was inside town limits. The voice said, almost there. Again, but this time there was no breathing, just silence between the words. The call ended before I could say anything. I wanted to call the commander again, but some part of me didn't want to hear what he'd say. 3 minutes later, the phone rang. I answered without checking the screen. Breathing. Not in my ear. Not through the headset. Behind me. I turned so fast my chair nearly tipped. The room was empty. Dale was in the break room, his chair pushed back, his monitor dark. The breathing in my headset stopped. Here, the voice said again. I looked back at the screen. The coordinates weren't in the field anymore. They weren't even outside. They were tagged to this very building. The call ended. And 3 minutes later, it rang again. When you've been in dispatch long enough, you stop hearing the room. The hum of the monitors, the faint hiss in your headset, the low drone of air conditioning. It all blends into the background until it's gone. That's why, when it changes, you notice. The calls have been coming like clockwork, every 3 minutes. Now, the silence between them felt heavier, thicker, like the air itself was pressing in on me. At 3:16, the line lit up again. Same number. Same unknown. I swallowed, adjusted my headset. 911. What's your emergency? No answer. Then breathing. But not the slow, steady rhythm from before. This was quicker, uneven like whoever it was had been running. Sir, are you in the building? I asked, my voice a little lower than usual. No response. The trace still showed the same thing. The pin right here, inside dispatch. Can you tell me where you are? The breathing hitched. And then a whisper. It was soft, stretched out, almost hesitant. My name. Not just hey or ma'am. My actual name. I froze. I hadn't given it to them. You don't on 911 unless it's absolutely necessary. I tried to steady my voice. How do you know my name? Silence. Then it came again. This time a little closer, like the mic had been moved right against their lips. They said my name the way you'd test the shape of it in your mouth. Slow. Careful. I muted my line, my hands tied on the console. Dale, this guy just... Except Dale wasn't there. His chair was still empty from before. I've been too caught up in the call to notice. I unmuted. If you need help, I can send someone right now. But you need to tell me where you are. Nothing. Just that breathing. And then another whisper. Not my name this time. It was my address. The street. The number. Even the little apartment letter at the end. Hearing it out loud made my skin crawl in a way I can't explain. You need to tell me how you got this information, I said, my voice breaking just enough to make me angry at myself. The voice didn't answer. It just repeated my name, over and over, each time a little louder until it didn't sound like a whisper anymore. It sounded like it was in my ear, not through the headset, in the room with me. I ripped the headset off, heart hammering, but the voice didn't stop. My name, my name, my name. I scanned the room, my pulse thudding in my ears. It was empty. I was alone, and yet I could feel it, that prickling on the back of my neck, that weight in the air, like someone was leaning close enough to touch me. I reached for the headset again, my hands shaking. The line was still open. Who is this? I demanded. Tell me who you are. The voice went quiet. For a few long seconds, there was only silence. I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then, so faint I almost missed it, I heard it. Turn around. Every instinct in me screamed not to. I kept my eyes on the console, on the glowing red timer that told me the call was still live. Turn around. It was softer the second time, but closer. I forced myself to speak. If you're in this building, security is on their way. They weren't. There is no security in dispatch. But I needed the lie as much as I hoped they did. The breathing slowed again. I could hear each inhale drag through their throat. Then, click, call ended. I sat there staring at the screen, willing myself to move. I didn't. At 3:19, the line lit up again. I didn't want to answer. I did anyway. 911, what's your emergency? My name. Just my name, drawn out until it didn't even sound like a word anymore. I didn't mute this time. I didn't look for Dale. I just said, what do you want? There was a pause. Then in that same low, deliberate whisper, you? The coordinates still read this building. I checked the internal map. It had narrowed down. This time it wasn't just dispatch. It was a specific point. My desk. I ripped the headset off again, spun in my chair, scanned the space. Still empty. But my skin was crawling now. I felt like I was being studied. I put the headset back on, my breathing heavy in my own ears. The voice breathed with me. Not copying this time, syncing, like we'd been doing it together for a long time. I'm going to hang up, I said. No, they whispered. The call timer ticked on. 1 minute. 2 minutes. I didn't hang up. And then, almost casually, they said something that made my throat go dry. They named the shirt I was wearing. The color. The logo. They even got the faded coffee stain under the collar. I pushed back from the desk, so fast my chair slammed into the wall. Where are you? I shouted. Tell me where the hell you are. They didn't answer. They just laughed. Once. Low. It didn't sound like they thought it was funny. It sounded like they knew something I didn't. Then, call ended. I backed down my console space and stood there in the middle of the room, hands shaking. I kept glancing at the hallway that led to the back offices, half expecting to see someone standing there. At 3:22, the line lit up again. Same number. I didn't want to answer, but I did. Behind you. I spun. Nothing. The coordinates on the trace didn't move. My desk, my head set me. Closer now. I yanked the headset off and dropped it on the desk. And I swear I heard my name one last time. Not through the headset. In the air. Right beside my ear that I thought the worst part of the breathing calls was over. I was wrong. After that last whisper, my name, spoken in a voice too close to the mic, I took the rest of my shift with my headset half off, the earpiece resting loosely against my head. I told myself it was so I could keep one ear on the room, but really it was because I couldn't stand the thought of hearing that sound again. Still, the calls stopped. That night, at least. When I came the next evening, there was an unspoken tension in the air. Dispatch rooms are always quiet in their own way, a hum of electronics and soft, clipped voices. But this was different. People were avoiding looking at me. Even my supervisor, Marlene, barely said evening before disappearing into her office. I logged in, my fingers a little stiff on the keyboard, and immediately saw the red flag in the system. Audio tech requested. My station number. At 9:12 p.m., 2 guys from County Communications came in. I'd never seen them before. One tall and rail-thin with messy hair, the other shorter, stocky, with a trimmed beard and a heavy toolkit slung over one shoulder. They didn't smile. "You're the one getting the noises?" the tall one asked. I didn't like how he said noises, like he'd been briefed, but no one had given him the details. "Breathing," I said, "and whispers. Same number every time, but it's not registered." The stocky guy set his bag down by my chair. "We'll run a trace on the inbound line. Could be bleed in from another channel." I nodded, even though my stomach twisted. I thought GPS said it was coming from a field. They exchanged a glance. "That's what the logs show," the tall one said, bending over the console. "But sometimes those things are just bad pings. Could be a cell tower anomaly." I didn't know much about cell tower anomalies, but I knew enough to hear a line in his voice, the kind of line where someone is saying just enough to keep you from asking more questions. They plugged something into my console, a black box with blinking green lights. For the next hour, they worked quietly, tapping keys, muttering about signal-to-noise ratios. I took calls from other lines, drunk drivers, a house fire, a woman reporting a suspicious man in her backyard. But I kept my eyes flicking to that black box, waiting. At 10:27, it happened again. The phone icon on my screen flashed. Same number. I froze for a second, then answered. 911, what's your? The breathing. Soft. Steady. Inhale, exhale, inhale. I glanced at the text. The tall one was already motioning for me to keep going. "Sir or ma'am, if you can hear me, please speak. Are you in danger?" No answer. Just breathing. Then, like before, my name. Whispered. "Salah." The stocky text head jerked up. "Holy SH. Shoo." The tall one snapped, waving for silence. I didn't hang up. The call lasted 38 seconds. When it ended, both of them went straight for their equipment. "It's not coming from the line," the tall one said finally, his voice tight. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," he hesitated, glancing toward the ceiling as if listening for something. "It's coming through your headset." I stared at him. "That doesn't make any sense. My headset's connected to the phone system." "Yeah," the stocky one said. "Except the signal we traced isn't digital. It's not even telephony. It's something else. Something else." My voice cracked. "Like an open mic," the tall one said slowly. "Except there's no mic open." The words didn't sink in at first, but when they did, I felt my skin crawl. They started testing, unplugging cables, swapping headsets, even moving my console to a different station. The calls, or whatever it was, still came through. Always in my ear, even when the phone itself wasn't ringing. By midnight, the rest of the shift had noticed. I caught the sideways looks, the whispers, the humankind, from 2 rows over. One dispatcher, Carla, came up to refill her coffee and lingered a moment too long. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I admitted. "Do you hear it too?" She shook her head. "No, just you." That was somehow worse. At 1:03 a.m., the text asked if they could run one last test. An audio capture directly from my headset while the building's internal lines were completely disconnected from the county grid. "Disconnected from everything?" I asked. "Everything," the stocky one confirmed. "If it comes through now, well, then it's not the phone system." I wasn't sure I wanted to know what that meant, but I nodded. They killed the connections. The room went eerily quiet without the constant beeps and soft chatter of incoming calls. The tall tech held up a hand for silence. I sat there, headset on, staring at the darkened monitor. And then, inhale, exhale. I ripped the headset off so fast it nearly yanked the cord out. It's still there, I said, my voice too loud in the quiet room. The tech stared at me. We've got it, the tall one said, already hitting keys on his laptop. Signals, oh, Jesus. What? I demanded. It's not riding the phone line, he said, almost to himself. It's inductive. It's in the wiring. This building's wiring. Something about that sentence made my stomach turn cold. Marlene came out of her office at that point, looking irritated. What the hell's going on? The tall tech pointed at the waveform on his screen, jagged peaks and valleys of sound. This is what's been coming through the headset, except it's not on any of your comm channels. It's literally bleeding in from the electrical system, like the building is picking it up. From where? She asked. He just shook his head. Don't know. Could be an old radio signal. Could be something else. The something else hung in the air like a bad smell. They ran spectrum analysis, scrolling through frequencies I didn't understand. Most were just static, but every so often that breathing would spike, and under it, just faintly, my name. By 3:15 a.m., the techs had stopped talking as much. They were pale, hunched over their laptops like they were afraid to look up. Finally, the stocky one muttered, "This doesn't make sense. There's no carrier signal." "No what?" I asked. "Nothing to transmit it," he said. "It's just here." The rest of the shift, I didn't take another call. Not because I didn't want to, but because no one would sit at my station. By the time my relief came in at 6 a.m., the techs were packing up. They didn't give me answers. They just said they'd file a report and look into possible building interference. But as I was leaving, the tall one stopped me at the door. "Hey," he said quietly. "If you hear it when you're not here, don't answer." I didn't ask what he meant, because deep down I think I already knew. That was 3 weeks ago. And last night, lying in bed in the dark, my phone on the nightstand lit up. Unknown number. No ringtone, just the vibration against the wood. I didn't pick up, but in the quiet of my apartment, I could still hear it. Inhale, exhale, and then, Salah. I've been on a night shift long enough to know that most calls aren't emergencies. Not real ones, anyway. Drunk people slurring their address and asking for pizza. Kids giggling and hanging up. Static from some old landline in a trailer park that's been disconnected for years. But when the line rang at 2:17 a.m. that night, I knew from the way it clicked in that it wasn't going to be one of those calls. The sound was too soft, too careful. 911, what's your emergency? I said. For a second, there was nothing. Just this faint hiss, like the sound you hear if you put your ear to a seashell. Then breathing. Slow, wet, measured. It was a man's breath. You learn to tell the difference after a while. Women tend to have this higher, lighter exhale, even when they're panicked. This was low, deep, like he was trying to stay calm. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" Nothing, just breathing. Then I heard it, a whisper so faint I thought maybe I imagined it. "Help me." My shoulders tensed. "Okay, I'm here to help you. What's going on? Where are you?" He didn't answer at first. I could hear the tremble in his breath. And when he finally spoke again, his voice was tight, like every word was costing him something. "He's right above me." I sat back in my chair. "Who's above you, sir?" "Don't know, crawling in the ceiling." I glanced at the CAD screen. The number was blocked. GPS was trying to get a fix, but the little icon just spun in place like it was confused. "Sir, are you in danger right now?" His breathing picked up, faster, harder. Please don't make me talk loud." That's when I realized he wasn't whispering because he was hurt. He was whispering because he thought someone might hear him. I lowered my voice too. "Okay, I won't make you. Just tell me, are you in a house?" "An apartment." His reply came slow, broken by little gasps. "Warehouse, old been locked up, thought I was alone." "Do you know the address?" "Can't." The way he said it, not "I don't know," but "can't," made something in my stomach turn. In the background, I caught another sound. Not his breathing. Something else. It was faint, but the kind of faint that cuts straight into your bones. A drag. A scuff. Like something heavy moving over wood. I pressed my headset tighter to my ear. "Sir, can you describe the person above you?" No, not a person. The room around me felt smaller. What do you mean? His breath hitched, like he was about to cry. The way it moves, wrong. I started typing notes into the system. Caller reports unknown subject and ceiling. Movement unnatural, location uncertain. Except, location uncertain wasn't supposed to mean this. It was supposed to mean address incomplete or caller unsure of cross street. Not whatever the hell this was. There was a pause on the line, and then it stopped. I strained to listen. The breathing on his end was ragged, too loud in my ear. But beneath it, I thought I heard a creak directly above him. He must have heard it too, because he whimpered and the sound made my skin crawl. A grown man, reduced to the kind of noise you make when you've already given up. Sir, I whispered, I'm going to try and get someone to you. Just keep talking to me, okay? Another pause. This time, I heard the creak again, but closer. And something else now. Something dragging along the wood, right above his head. It didn't sound like footsteps. It sounded like elbows. He whispered, It's looking for me. My mouth went dry. How do you know that? A long silence. Then, it's saying my name. I froze. I didn't hear it at first, but after a few seconds, buried under the static and his uneven breathing, something, a voice, so quiet it barely existed, drawing out syllables like it was tasting them. I couldn't make them out through the line, but I believed him. I typed faster, flagging the call as urgent. But the CED kept failing to get a location. I tried reverse lookup on the number, but the database returned unregistered / not in service. The man whispered again, harsher now. It's closer. I heard it too. That same scuff drag, except it was faster this time. Almost excited. I need you to move somewhere safe, I said. Is there another room? Somewhere you can. It's not letting me leave. What do you mean? If I move, it moves. The way he said it, I pictured him frozen in place, every muscle locked, afraid that if he so much as twitched, whatever was above him would come crashing down. I tried to think of something, anything that might help. What about your phone? Can you use the flashlight, get a better look? A shaky breath. Don't want to see it. I didn't push him. Then, without warning, the sound above him stopped again. We both went completely silent. And that's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate inhale, not his. It came right through the line, deep and cold, like someone was breathing into a space too small for them. Then, thump, hard enough that I jumped in my chair. He gasped, his voice breaking. It's on the wall now. I started to say something, but he cut me off. No, it's coming down. The sound that followed didn't belong in any call I've ever taken. It wasn't the crash of a body falling or a door breaking. It was soft, wet, like something sliding into the room. Then his breathing went wild, the phone rustling as if he was backing away, and all I could do was listen to his voice drop lower and lower until it was nothing but broken whimpers. And then, click, the line went dead. The GPS finally locked in, and the location blinked onto my screen. It wasn't a warehouse. It was a vacant lot. No structure. No ceiling to crawl in. Nothing at all. I kept thinking about that first call for the rest of the shift. His voice was still in my head. That rasp. That desperate way he said, She's right above me. I've been on dispatch for years, and you start to build a wall in your head. A place where all the bad stuff goes. You hear panic, you hear pain, but you drop it into that wall and keep working. This one, it didn't go in. It stayed with me. Maybe it was the breathing. Maybe it was because he never yelled, never screamed. He sounded like someone who had already been afraid for too long. 3 hours passed before the number came up on my screen again. I swallowed hard before answering. 911. What's your emergency? The same voice. I'm still here. I froze. Sir, can you tell me your name? They keep crawling. They don't stop when you're quiet. They just move slower. His voice cracked, like he'd been whispering for hours. I tried to stay calm. Okay, let's start with your location again. 3rd floor. Far corner. I can see the exit sign if I lean out. What building? I asked. There was a pause, then yours. For a moment, I didn't understand. Our building? You mean what building is that? You know it. You're in it. I looked at the GPS feed on my monitor. The location wasn't right. It wasn't anything. It showed a blank gray shape in the middle of the city map. No street name, no coordinates. almost like the system couldn't decide where it was. I thought maybe he was confused, maybe he was hurt. I tried again. Sir, are you saying you're inside our dispatch building? Yes, he whispered, but it's wrong here. Those two words hit me harder than they should have. It's wrong here. I signaled to Carla, the shift lead, and mouthed, trace this now. She leaned over, saw the number, and frowned. That's unlisted. No carrier ID. It's not even supposed to be in the system. The man spoke again, lower this time, like he didn't want someone to hear him. You don't understand. I've been here for hours, but the halls don't end where they should. They turn wrong. The corners don't match. And the lights, they hum. I could feel my pulse in my throat. The hum. Our overhead fluorescents had that faint electrical buzz when they warmed up. I asked him to describe exactly where he was. He whispered, I can hear you talking. My mouth went dry. I'm right here, he added. And then, the sound changed. In the background, faint but sharp, I heard the creak of a ceiling tile shifting. Just one, like someone putting their weight on it. I glanced up at our ceiling, the same cheap white panels, and for a second I couldn't help but picture someone crawling above me. I told Carla, send security to sweep the building. Now. She hesitated. For what? There's no. Now. I put the headset back on. Sir, we have people looking. Stay where you are. Keep talking to me. Silence. Only the sound of him breathing, slow and uneven. I called out again. Are you there? The breathing stopped. And then, so close to the mic I could hear the saliva click between his teeth, he said, You won't find me. The line went dead. Security did 2 full sweeps. Every office, every hallway, every storage room. Nothing. No one. When they came back, I asked if they'd checked the crawl space above the ceiling tiles. The lead guard shook his head. That's sealed. No access except through maintenance, and they're not even here tonight. Carla told me to log it and move on. It's probably a prank. Creeps do this all the time, but it didn't feel like a prank. Prank calls have a rhythm. They try too hard to be scary, or they laugh. This man, he never tried to scare me. He was scared. 2 hours later, the number came through again. This time, I almost didn't want to answer, but I had to. 911, what's your emergency? He whispered like before. It's different now. She's not above me anymore. My stomach dropped. Where is she? The pause was longer this time. I could hear him trying to control his breathing. Behind you. I turned. The room was quiet. Everyone was focused on their own calls. The only movement was the glow of monitors. But still, I checked. I checked again. Sir, are you sure you're not hurt? You might be disoriented. She watches you too, he said. I felt every muscle in my neck go tight. Who is she? The line crackled, like something brushing against the mic. She doesn't have a name. I waved for Carla again, asked her to run another trace. She stared at the screen for a moment, then shook her head. Same nothing location. Just static coordinates. Like it's pinging from inside here. I asked the man again to tell me exactly what he saw. His answer made my hand shake. I see you moving your lips. But you're not talking to me right now. I glanced up at the wall clock. My headset was on. I was talking to him. I told him he must be mistaken. He said, It doesn't matter. You'll see her soon enough. And then, faintly, through the line, I heard a second voice. Not words, just a slow, deliberate inhale, like someone filling their lungs while leaning over a microphone. I ripped my headset off. Carla saw my face and asked what was wrong, but I couldn't even explain. The tech team checked my console, my headset, the line history. All of it came back clean, but the number kept showing up in the logs. Always from nowhere. Always unregistered. That night, after my shift ended, I sat in my car in the empty parking lot for almost an hour before starting the engine. Every time I thought about driving home, I'd hear it again, that single ceiling tile shifting. And for the first time since I started this job, I didn't feel safe in the building. Not because of who might call next, but because I wasn't sure anymore that they were calling from outside at all, that I didn't sleep after that shift. I went home, sat on my couch with all the lights on, and stared at my ceiling for 3 straight hours. The sound from that call kept looping in my head. The crawling, the faint scraping of something hard on metal, the low breaths. But it wasn't just replaying in my memory. It was replaying exactly like an audio clip stuck on repeat. Same pattern, same pauses, Same weight behind each exhale. By the time I came back to the office that night, I had convinced myself it was just some coincidence. Maybe the guy was calling from a building with similar ductwork. Maybe the echoes matched ours because all ventilation sounds kind of similar when you're stressed. That's what I told myself as I walked into the dispatch center. The room was bright, the hum of electronics steady. Everyone else was talking, laughing even, like nothing was wrong. But I noticed right away, nobody was sitting at Station 3. That was mine. Before I even set my bag down, I asked Karen, the shift lead, what happened to 3? She glanced at it, shrugged. Maintenance guys were poking around earlier. Said something about noise in the ceiling. Couldn't find anything. They'll be back tomorrow. I froze. Noise? Yeah, like scratching or something. Didn't you hear it last night? She asked. Her tone was casual, but I could see the way she kept her eyes just slightly down. Like she didn't want to make too much of it. I nodded slow. Yeah, I heard something. I sat down anyway. The chair creaked under me. The headset was still warm from whoever had been covering the station. I adjusted it, and the soft hiss of the open line filled my ears. The first 2 hours were routine. Car accident. Domestic disturbance. Nothing unusual. Then, at 11:14, line 5 lit up. 911. What's your emergency? At first, nothing. Just a faint static. Then a sound came through, a dragging. Like something heavy being pulled across a narrow space. Slow, deliberate. Not over the phone exactly, but in my ears. Inside the headset. I swallowed. Hello? Can you speak up? The dragging stopped. Then faint. Tack, tack, tack. 3 small taps, spaced evenly. The hair on my arm stood up. Those were the same taps I had heard the night before. Exactly the same. Same distance between them. Same hollow tone, like on thin metal. Where are you calling from? I asked. My voice cracked. No answer. Then that breathing again. Not over the phone line. Above me. I pulled the headset away from my ear and just sat there, staring at the ceiling. The sound didn't stop. If anything, it got clearer without the headset. Karen, I called, my voice low. She turned from her station. Yeah. Do you hear that? She frowned, cocked her head. A few seconds passed, and I could see it. The exact moment she picked it up too. Her eyes darted upward. Probably in the ducts, she said, but it wasn't convincing. She kept her voice light, but she didn't move from her seat. The sound shifted then, from dragging to that slow crawl again. Knees or elbows pressing against something hollow, moving inch by inch. Right above us. Maintenance showed up around midnight. 2 guys in navy shirts, tool belts clanking. I felt an almost desperate relief when I saw them, like they were the only lifeline between me and whatever was up there. One of them, Bill, climbed onto a desk and popped one of the ceiling tiles above Station 3. We all stepped back, waiting. He peered into the gap for maybe 10 seconds before looking down at me. There's nothing up here, he said. I blinked. You don't hear it? I hear something, he admitted. But there's no space up here for anything to move. No crawl space. No duct big enough for a person. It's just the plenum, wiring vents. You couldn't fit a cat up here. I stared at him. Then what's making the noise? Bill just shrugged. Could be rats. Karen made a face. That's not rats. It's too heavy. Bill sighed, stepped down, replaced the tile. Look, I can open up a few more spots if you want, but there's nothing to find. I wanted to tell him to keep going, to tear the whole ceiling apart if he had to. But part of me didn't want to see what was really up there. By 1 a.m., the maintenance guys left. The noises didn't. In fact, they started coming from different directions. First over my head, then over Karen's station, then from the far side of the room, near the break area. And it wasn't just crawling now. It was shifting, like something was repositioning itself. At 1:27, I took another call. Different number, different voice. A woman this time, whispering so softly I had to press the headset hard against my ear to hear. It's right above me, she said. My stomach dropped. Where are you? I asked. She gave an address, one that didn't exist. I felt cold all over. Ma'am, can you describe what you're hearing? It's crawling, she breathed. In the ceiling. I can see the tiles moving. I looked up at mine. They weren't moving, but I could hear them. Faint vibration in the thin metal frame. I asked again, where are you? Silence. Then, in a voice lower, more strained. "It's moving toward you." I ripped the headset off. Karen was staring at me. "Was that?" she started. "Yes," I said quickly. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. The lines kept ringing, but we hesitated before picking them up. Every other call that came through had the same background sound. Faint crawling, faint scraping, no matter who was on the other end. By 3 a.m., it wasn't just one or two lines. It was all of them, even the non-emergency desk phones. When my relief came in at 6, I didn't even try to explain. I just clocked out, grabbed my bag, and walked to the parking lot. The air outside felt too open, too quiet after that room. But as I reached my car, I realized something. The building has no vents big enough to crawl through. No real crawl space. Nothing for sound to travel like that. So whatever was moving up there, it wasn't in the ceiling. It was inside the building itself. That I've been working nights for long enough to know what weird feels like. It starts small. A sound you can't place. A pause you can't explain. That thin feeling in your stomach that tells you something's wrong before your brain catches up. But this wasn't weird. This was something else. The noise had been going on for days. Weeks, maybe. No one could agree when it started. A scratching. A slow drag. Sometimes a breath. And every time we called maintenance, they said the same thing. There's nothing above dispatch. No crawl space. No storage. Just insulation, beams, and a roof. And yet, the sound carried, soft but steady, like someone was crawling overhead. By the time that last call came in, I'd already stopped telling people about it. My coworkers either shrugged it off or didn't want to talk. And me? I was tired. Tired enough that when the line lit up at 3:14 a.m., I almost felt relieved. A distraction. Something normal. 911, what's your... But I didn't get to finish. A man's voice came through low, quick. "Don't talk. Just listen." I froze. There was something about his tone, breathy, sharp, that made my throat tighten. And then I heard it. Not through his phone. Not through the headset's usual channel. But faint, layered in the air around me. A whisper. I glanced up, even though I knew I wouldn't see anything. The whisper was coming from above. The man on the line spoke again, but slower this time. It's doing again." "What's doing what?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "It's copying me," he said. A pause. And then, faint but clear, from above my own head. "It's copying me." I didn't breathe for a second. My first thought, ridiculous as it was that maybe the headset was feeding back. But the techs had tested it. This wasn't on the line. This wasn't in the system. The man must have heard my silence because he said, "You hear it, don't you?" I swallowed. "Where are you calling from?" That's when the line went strange. Not static exactly. More like a long, shallow exhale from both ends at once. "Where you are," he said. I gripped the edge of the desk. "You're in this building?" Another pause. And then, this was the part that made my hands go cold. His next words came from above me before they came from him. "Look up." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The voice from above was mine. My exact tone. My exact cadence. I don't remember looking up, but I must have because I saw the faintest shift in the shadows between the ceiling panels. No movement exactly. Just a difference like something had leaned closer. The man's breathing on the line quickened. It knows when you hear it. It likes when you hear it. And then, again, seconds before I could even form the words, my voice from above. It likes when you hear it. I slid my chair back, so fast it hit the wall behind me. My headset cord pulled tight, and for a moment I felt like something had wrapped around my throat. "I'm sending police," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Above me, my voice said, "I'm sending police." And then, a beat later, the man on the line said, "You can't send anyone. You know that." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the sound from above had shifted. It wasn't speaking anymore. It was laughing. Only it wasn't a normal laugh. It was mine. Short, breathy, like I just heard a joke I wasn't sure I should laugh at. The man whispered, "It's right over you now." I ripped the headset off, and the laugh kept going. Not in my ears, right there in the room. I turned to Karen, the dispatcher at the next station. "Do you hear that?" She frowned. "Hear what?" Of course she couldn't hear it. No one ever could accept the person it was choosing. I put the headset back on. The line was dead. But the sound above me, that didn't stop. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, slow. I reached for my phone. my personal one, to call someone, anyone, but then I stopped. Because above me, my voice said, "Don't call anyone." I froze, my phone halfway out of my pocket. Then, a second later, I said it. Out loud, without meaning to. I don't know if you've ever felt your own words not belong to you. It's like your mouth becomes a stranger's. Like something is winding you up and pressing play. The laugh came again. This time, it didn't sound exactly like me. It was wider, fuller, like something was testing the edges of the sound. I backed away from my station until I hit the far wall. Above me, a breath dragged slow and long, like it was smelling the air. I whispered, "What do you want?" And then, seconds before I could even hear my own words, my voice from above whispered, "What do you want?" But it didn't wait for me to repeat it. It answered itself. To stay. My skin went cold. I thought about the man who'd called. How he'd said it was copying him. How he'd said it knew when you could hear it. I think he'd been where I was now. I think maybe he hadn't made it out. I couldn't stay in that room. I grabbed my things and moved toward the hallway, telling myself I just needed air. But as soon as I reached the door, "Don't leave," my voice said from above. And then I heard my own voice from my own throat, unbidden, whispering, "Don't leave." I walked faster. My shoes sounded too loud on the tile. Each step was met with the faintest echo above me, perfectly in sync. Halfway down the hall, I stopped. Not because I wanted to, but because I could not. My body just halted. Then slowly my head tilted back. I didn't do it. And I swear I saw the panel above me flex, just slightly, like something heavy had shifted its weight. From above, my voice said, "Not alone." And this time, I didn't repeat it. I didn't have to, because I finally understood. It wasn't copying me. It was teaching me that I didn't even know we had a storage room in the back. I'd been working at the dispatch center for almost 3 years, and somehow, I'd never stepped past the supply closet. It's not like I'd avoided it on purpose. There was just never a reason to. Headsets, printer paper, batteries, pins, those were all kept in the front shelves, right where everyone could grab them. The day I found the box, I wasn't looking for anything. I'd just been told to tidy up because the captain was coming for an inspection the next week. Usually, that means dusting surfaces and making sure no one's half-empty coffee cups were molding behind computer monitors. But it was quiet, quieter than usual, so I figured I'd go all in. I moved the heavy office chair out of the way, swept behind the consoles, wiped down the monitors. And when I got to the supply closet, I noticed something odd. The back wall wasn't a wall. It was a door. Not the kind you notice right away. It was painted the same dull gray as the rest of the room and didn't have a handle, just a little notch where your fingers could pull. I tugged on it, half expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. The smell hit me first, dust, dry cardboard, a faint tang of something metallic. The room beyond was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Bare concrete floor, bare bulb hanging overhead, and stacks of boxes on metal shelves. I don't know why, but the place felt wrong, like it wasn't meant to be found. I told myself it was just the smell or the coldness of the air in there. But the whole time I was stacking and dusting, I kept glancing back at the door, like I was expecting it to shut on its own. About halfway through, I noticed a box shoved low to the ground, tucked behind a crate of old radios. It was smaller than the others, maybe the size of a shoebox, and covered in a thick coat of gray dust. No label, no writing, just cardboard, edges soft with age. It was heavier than I expected when I pulled it out. When I opened it, the dust billowed up so thick I had to wave it away from my face. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them. The cheap kind, clear plastic cases, paper stickers on the sides. None of them had dates. None of them had case numbers. Some had nothing written at all. Others had a single word, scribbled like it was done in a hurry. Breathe. Static. Don't answer. At first, I thought maybe these were training recordings. We use tapes sometimes, old 911 calls from years back, to teach rookies how to handle different situations. But we keep those in the main archive, neatly labeled and logged in the digital system. These weren't logged anywhere I could find. And there was something else. They weren't stored like normal recordings. They weren't in sleeves. The tapes themselves were bare, cold to the touch, and some had warped slightly from heat or age. I should have just put the box back. I know that now, but I didn't. I took it to my desk. The rest of the shift, I couldn't focus on anything else. The box sat there in the corner of my vision, like it was daring me to open one. I told myself I'd just listen to one, just to satisfy my curiosity. Around 2 a.m., the phones were dead quiet. My partner, Maria, had gone for a cigarette break. It was just me, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights, and the faint whir of the servers in the back. I pulled the first tape from the box. The sticker just said, 01. We still had an old cassette player in the office, tucked behind the filing cabinet. I popped the tape in, pressed play. There was a click, a hiss, then breathing. Slow, shallow breathing, like someone was trying not to be heard. I turned up the volume, leaning closer. It went on for maybe 15 seconds before a man's voice whispered, "She's in the walls." I froze. The voice was hoarse, shaky, like the caller was terrified. But what struck me most was how close it sounded. Not like a phone call at all, like he was right there in the room with me. The tape clicked off abruptly. No dispatcher's voice. No questions. No background noise except that whisper. I rewound it, played it again. Same thing. I grabbed another tape. The sticker read, "Don't answer." This one started mid-call. The dispatcher, a man, voice low, steady, kept saying, "Hello? Can you hear me?" over and over. On the other end, there was just something. Not static exactly. More like faint scraping, like fingernails on metal. Then a voice came through, so faint I almost missed it. It said the dispatcher's name, over and over. I knew the name. He'd worked here before I started. I'd heard stories about him, how he quit suddenly, moved out of state. People said he just couldn't handle the stress anymore. The voice on the tape was saying his name in this slow, deliberate way, each syllable stretched, almost mocking. Then the tape stopped. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the player, feeling the hairs on my arms stand up. I tried to tell myself these were fakes. Maybe some kind of twisted joke or a failed training experiment that never got used. But that didn't explain why they were hidden away. Why not to mention them? Maria came back, saw the box, and asked what it was. I told her I'd found it in storage. She frowned. "We don't have a storage room." I laughed, thinking she was messing with me. But she didn't laugh back. "I'm serious," she said. "Back there's just the supply closet. I've cleaned it myself." I told her to come look, but when we opened the closet, the back wall was solid. No door, no notch, just smooth gray wall. I stood there, holding the box in my hands, trying to make sense of it. I must have looked pale, because Maria touched my arm and said, "Hey, maybe you need a break." I didn't argue. The rest of the night, I kept the box under my desk. I don't know why I didn't just leave it there. Maybe I was afraid it would disappear, like the door. When I clocked out, I took it home with me. It felt heavier than before. That night, I lay in bed, the box sitting on my dresser across the room. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that breathing again. That whisper, "She's in the walls." At some point, I got up, opened another tape. This one had no sticker. It started with a faint hum, like a power line in the distance. Then a woman's voice panicked, saying, "Please, I can't find the stairs." Every time I turn the corner, I'm back in the same hallway. Her breathing was ragged, desperate. I could hear her footsteps, quick and uneven. She kept calling for someone, maybe a name, maybe help. I couldn't tell. Then a sound. Not footsteps, not breathing. Something crawling. Slow at first, then faster. The woman screamed, dropped the phone, at least it sounded like she did, and the crawling got louder, closer. Then the line went dead. I sat there in the dark, holding the tape, realizing my hands were shaking. I didn't sleep at all. The next night, I brought the box back to work. I didn't tell anyone about it. Didn't mention the door. I just kept it under my desk, feeling its weight against my feet. I told myself I wouldn't listen to any more. But around 3 a.m., the phones went quiet again. I reached for the next tape that I didn't plan to play it. The box had been sitting on my desk for 3 days by then, and I told myself I was just keeping it there until someone in records came back from vacation to deal with it. That's what I said out loud to people, anyway. The truth was, I kept looking at it. Every shift, every time my eyes wandered. It sat right there in the corner of my desk, a little too close to my elbow, its cardboard edges soft with age, the dust still clinging no matter how many times I'd brushed it off. There are no labels on the box and no handwriting on the tapes inside. Just rows of cassettes in cheap plastic cases, their clear shells showing the wound-up reels inside. Old dispatch calls. Not what they had to be. I think what really made me give in wasn't curiosity, it was the sound. Every so often, when the room was quiet, I swore I could hear something faint from inside the box. Not voices exactly. Not words. Just this hiss like old tape hiss, the kind you only notice when you're in an empty room. On my third overnight shift with the box sitting there, I decided I was going to listen to one. Just one. The office was still. Two other dispatchers were here, but one was on break and the other was typing quietly. The fluorescent lights hummed above, casting that sickly blue tint on everything. I slipped my headphones on and took one tape out at random. No label. No date. Nothing. I slid it into the old cassette deck we still had in the corner, the one we only ever used for training recordings. I pressed play. For a few seconds, all I got was static. A soft rush of white noise. And then, the click of a line opening. A voice. 911, what's your emergency? It was a man's voice answering the line. Not mine. Not anyone I recognized. It was deeper, with a tired rasp, like he'd been smoking for 40 years. The caller came in right after a man speaking fast and panicked. There's somebody outside my house. The dispatcher asked him to describe the person. And then the caller said something that made my stomach tighten. It's me. The dispatcher didn't react right away. I could hear the hesitation in his breath. Sir, you mean they look like you? No, the caller said. It is me. I'm looking at myself right now. He's standing in the yard. He's just watching the window. The tape carried on in real time, every second stretching. The dispatcher asked the usual questions, address, description, whether he was armed. The caller's voice kept shaking, and at one point, I swear I could hear his teeth chattering. He's wearing the same clothes I'm wearing right now. Same shoes. Same everything. And he's smiling at me. I felt my throat go dry. There was something about the way the man said it, like he was forcing the words out, but there was this second layer to his voice, almost like he wasn't just scared. He was disgusted. The dispatcher told him to stay on the line while he contacted a unit. I heard the faint sound of typing on a keyboard in the background. Then the caller went quiet for a few seconds. And when he spoke again, his voice was lower. He's walking to the door. I heard him get up, his footsteps on a hardwood floor. The dispatcher kept trying to keep him talking, but the man's breathing had turned quick and shallow. He's knocking, the caller whispered. Oh God, he's knocking. There were 3 slow knocks through the line, deep and hollow. My skin prickled. The dispatcher asked if he could see the man through the door's peephole. The caller hesitated, then said, He's closer now. He's pressed against the glass. There was this tiny, muffled sound right after. A chuckle. Barely there. I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't wearing headphones. The dispatcher told him to lock all the doors and wait for the officers. The man didn't answer right away. I heard more footsteps, a creak like floorboards, shifting. Then in the shaky voice he asked, Do you hear that? The dispatcher said no. I think he's inside. I sat back in my chair, my stomach twisting. The tape kept rolling, but there was no sound of a door opening. Just the caller's breathing, ragged and fast. Then, another voice came through the line. Same tone, same cadence, same exact voice as the caller. I'm here. The call cut to static. No end of call, sign off. No follow-up. Just nothing. I stopped the tape and sat there, staring at the deck. Something about it didn't make sense. I knew all the 911 records for the past 20 years. That's part of training. They drill it into you that everything is logged. Even prank calls. Even hang-ups. But I'd never heard of this one. I checked the digital archives. No entry matched that caller's name or address. Hell, the address he gave. It didn't exist. Not in our city. Not even in the county. But there was something else that kept crawling around in my head. Something I didn't want to admit. The knocking. Those 3 slow knocks. They sounded familiar. Not just in the way all knocks sound vaguely alike, no. I'd heard those exact knocks before. The deep echo, the way the last one rang, just a fraction longer than the rest. I'd heard them here. In this building. It was probably nothing. An old building has a way of carrying sound. But that didn't stop me from glancing toward the front door of dispatch, even though it was locked and bathed in the pale glow of the outside lamp. I put the tape back in the box and shoved it under my desk. Out of sight, For the rest of my shift, I couldn't stop hearing those knocks in my head, over and over, each one spaced apart like a heartbeat. When my relief came in the morning, I was halfway out the door before she could even sit down. I didn't want to be there anymore. But that night, lying in bed, something kept gnawing at me. The chuckle, that almost silent laugh on the tape. The more I thought about it, the more I was sure I'd heard it somewhere else before. And then it hit me. Not a memory from outside work. Not from a friend or a family member. I'd heard it here. From a caller that I didn't want to go back to the storage room. After the first tape, I told myself I'd put the box back on the top shelf, shove it into the corner where the dust was thick enough to hide it again, and forget it was ever there. I even tried to convince myself that the tape player was broken, that the warbling voices and strange distortions had tricked my brain into hearing something impossible. But the box, it kept pulling at me. Not in some supernatural way, at least not at first. It was more like that feeling when you know you've left your front door unlocked, and even though you're lying in bed, comfortable, almost asleep, your brain keeps poking you. You know you're not going to rest until you check. So I checked. The second tape was labeled with nothing more than the date. February 17th, 2015. I froze when I read it. I didn't even start at dispatch until 2019. That date was 4 years before I ever touched a headset. For years before I even lived in this town. Back then, I was still in college, still working part-time at a coffee shop. I hadn't even decided I wanted to work in emergency services yet. I sat there staring at the little square of masking tape on the cassette, my thumb brushing over the faded ink. Someone had written it in this hurried, slanted handwriting, like they were trying to get it down before they forgot. I thought maybe it was just a mislabeled tape. Maybe the person who logged these just used old dates for some reason. It wouldn't be the first time records were sloppy. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I loaded the cassette into the player. Press play. The hiss of static filled the storage room first, then the familiar tone of a 911 call ringing in. The recording kicked in mid-breath, and I heard a voice, a woman's voice, answering the line. My voice. I didn't want to believe it, but it was me. The same cadence. The same flat, steady tone I used when I needed to keep someone calm. The same way I said, 911, what's your emergency? With that tiny drop on the word emergency that no one else seemed to do. Only this wasn't from 2019 or later. This was before. The caller was a man. Older. His voice was shaky but not panicked. Like he didn't know yet whether what he'd seen was dangerous or just strange. I think someone's in my yard, he said. He's just standing there. Can you describe him? My voice asked on the tape. The man hesitated. It's me. I remember holding my breath at that line. The me on the tape asked the same thing I would have asked. You mean he looks like you? Like a relative? No, the man said. It's me. He's wearing what I'm wearing right now. He's standing the way I'm standing. When I move, he moves. Like he's. The call cut for a second, a glitch in the recording. When it came back, the man's voice was higher, faster. He smiled at me. Just now. I didn't smile, but he did. Same face. Same. Another cut. Then silence. No hang-up click. No call ended tone. Just dead air and the faint hum of the recording line. I stopped the tape and just sat there in that awful quiet, my thumb pressing against the eject button, but not pushing it. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. I checked the date again. 2015. The timestamp printed in faint dot matrix numbers on the tape side was clear. And the thing that made my skin crawl wasn't the date itself. It was the time. 2:13 a.m. That was my shift time. The graveyard rotation. And this wasn't a one-off. I went through more tapes. I couldn't help myself. One after another, I popped them in, rewound, hit play. Every single one, at least the dozen I checked, was from a night shift. My hours. My voice. My cadence. Calls I never took years before I ever worked here. One tape had a call from 2013 where a teenager whispered that she could see someone climbing the telephone pole outside her bedroom window, even though it was raining and dark. She said he was smiling without blinking, and when she yelled for her dad, the figure dropped down and was suddenly right outside her window. And the voice guiding her through it? Me. I didn't remember any of it because I hadn't been there. But the voice was mine. I started to feel like maybe I'd lost time. Like maybe I'd had some blackout years I didn't know about. But that was insane, right? You don't just forget 4 years of your life and accidentally work at a place before you get hired. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe these weren't just recordings. Maybe there was something else. By the fourth tape I listened to, my hand was shaking so badly I had to keep rewinding because I'd hit the wrong button. That one was dated January 9th, 2016. A woman whispering about a tapping sound coming from under her kitchen floor. She kept saying it was answering her. 2 taps for yes, 1 for no. The more she talked, the more certain she sounded that it wasn't a person. And the dispatcher, me, told her not to speak to it anymore. I could hear my voice drop low, almost sharp, as if I knew something she didn't. It made me sick to my stomach. I don't know how long I sat in that storage room after that, staring at the box. The air in there was hot and stale, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. It was like I thought if I walked out, the box would vanish, and then I'd never be able to prove it was real. Eventually, I stacked the tapes I'd listened to on the desk, all lined up in neat little rows, their dates facing me like an accusation. Every one of them was from a night I worked, even the ones from before I started, even the ones from before I lived here. That's when I saw the last detail, the handwriting on the labels. I'd been so focused on the dates that I hadn't looked closely at the writing before. It was mine, the same slant, the same way I looped my 7s and left the top of my 4s open. The way I made my 5s look almost like S's when I wrote them fast. I don't remember labeling them. I don't remember writing those dates. But the ink was faded like it had been there for years. My throat felt tight. My legs went cold. I told myself I was going to put everything back exactly the way I found it, close the box, put on a shelf, and never touch it again. I even started to do it. But when I reached for the pile of tapes, I noticed one had slid just slightly off the desk, the corner of its case catching the light in a way that made the label easier to read. The date on it was next week that I almost didn't press play. I've been sitting there for what felt like hours, my fingers hovering over the worn plastic buttons of the cassette player, the air in the storage room thick and unmoving. The final tape was already sitting in the slot, label side up, though that didn't matter. Like the others, it was unlabeled. But I knew this one was different. It was heavier in my hand when I picked it up earlier. Not literally, just heavier in a way I could feel in my stomach. The other tapes had been strange, unsettling, wrong. But this one felt like it was waiting for me. And that terrified me. I'd been stalling, cleaning up the mess of cassettes spread across the desk, rearranging them in their cardboard box, rechecking my watch, even though time seemed to be moving at its own pace in here. I told myself I'd play it after I grabbed another cup of coffee, after I locked the storage room door, after I made sure no one else was in the building. But the truth was, I knew exactly why I didn't want to hear it. The last call on the last tape wasn't going to be like the others. It wasn't going to be some voice from years ago, or a call that shouldn't exist, or a recording from a night I couldn't have possibly been here. No, this one felt personal. It felt like it was already inside me. I pressed play. At first, there was only silence. Not static, just nothing. A clean, empty absence of sound that seemed to press against my eardrums. I leaned closer, waiting, my breath shallow. Then faintly a sound. It wasn't a voice yet. Just breathing. Ragged, desperate. Too close to the microphone. My fingers tensed against the desk. And then I heard it. My voice. I didn't recognize it at first. Not because it didn't sound like me. It did, but because I had never heard myself like that before. Not in recordings, not even in the worst nights on this job. It was pure panic, raw and shaking. Please. A gasp. Please, you have to send someone. I felt my own throat tighten. The me on the tape was crying. There in the house. I froze. My hand was hovering over the stop button, but I couldn't press it. I couldn't move. The voice on the tape gave an address. I didn't know it. Not a street name I recognized. Not even close. It wasn't in my town, maybe not even in my county. Please, I don't know how they got in. There was a sound in the background. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Coming closer. My recorded self started to sob harder, choking on the words. They're right outside the door. I can hear them. Oh God, please hurry. My skin prickled, because I realized something. The calls I'd listened to before, every one of them had sounded wrong in ways I couldn't explain. Old, warped, like they didn't belong to the world I lived in. But this one was sharp, clear, present, like it was happening now. On the tape, my voice whispered, "They know I'm here." And then, something I can't forget, there was a knock. 3 soft taps, right against what must have been the other side of the door. My recorded voice made a sound I didn't know I could make. And then another sound, so faint I almost missed it, something dragging across the floor. And then silence. I waited, holding my breath for something more. But there was only a tiny click, and then the tape ended. I just sat there. My mind felt blank. My ears were still straining for the next sound, even though I knew there wasn't one. I looked down at the cassette player, my hand hovering like I might rewind it, like I might try to hear it again. But I couldn't bring myself to, because I knew what would happen if I pressed play again. It wouldn't be the same call. It would be me, here, now, saying something I hadn't said yet. I pushed my chair back so fast it scraped against the floor, the noise echoing off the concrete walls. My pulse was hammering so hard I could feel in my teeth. The storage room suddenly felt too small, too still. I could hear my own breathing, and for a moment, it matched the pattern from the start of the tape, ragged, uneven. I grabbed the cassette and shoved it back into the box, forcing the cardboard flaps closed. I wanted it gone, out of the building, out of my sight, out of existence. But the thought came before I could stop it. The box had been here long before I found it. It would be here long after I was gone. And then another thought, quieter but sharper. What if the tape wasn't a recording? What if it was a warning? I took the box from my desk and set it down beside me for the rest of my shift. I couldn't keep it in storage anymore. Not with the way the air felt in there after I played it. The way the shadows in the corners seemed thicker. I told myself I'd throw it away when I left for the night. Drive it to the landfill, bury it under something heavy. But I didn't, because I couldn't bring myself to touch that last tape again. Instead, I left the box in the back seat of my car. And that night, when I went home, I kept catching myself glancing out the window, looking for an address I didn't know. 2 nights later, it happened. I was halfway through my shift when the phone rang. Not the main line, the direct emergency dispatch. I picked it up. 911, what's your emergency? And then I heard it. My own voice. Please, you have to send someone. It was the tape. Word for word. Every pause, every sob. The address spilled out of my mouth before I could think. The same one I'd heard before. The one that wasn't real. And then I realized it wasn't me hearing a recording this time. It was me saying it. I dropped the phone. I don't even remember hanging up. My heart was slamming in my chest, my body buzzing like static. I stood there, frozen, until I heard something behind me. 3 soft taps. On the door to the dispatch room. I didn't open it. I sat there in the glow of the monitors, gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles went white, waiting for something to happen. But the door never opened. Eventually, my shift ended. The morning dispatcher came in, cheerful and oblivious, and I left without saying a word. When I got in my car, the box was gone from the back seat. Only the last tape was left, sitting neatly on the driver's seat. I didn't play it again. I didn't have to, because sometimes when I'm home alone, I can hear the knock. 3 soft taps, right outside my bedroom door. And I know, one night, I'll answer it. I've taken night shifts for years now, and there's one thing that always puts me on edge more than anything else: silence. Not the regular kind, where you just don't have calls for a bit. I mean the kind where it feels like the world itself has gone still, like someone pressed pause. No radio chatter. No distant sirens. No hum of passing cars outside. Just nothing. That's exactly how the night started. It was just past 1 a.m., the building lights buzzing overhead. I was working my shift alone for the first hour before the others came in. My headset was warm against my ear, my coffee had gone cold, and I was half reading through last week's incident logs when the phone rang. The sound was sharp, sudden, almost too loud against the dead air. 911, what's your emergency? I said automatically, my voice steady. The voice on the other end was a man's. Middle-aged, maybe. Out of breath. All the lights are out. I frowned. Sir, where are you calling from? County line. The whole town. Street lights, houses, everything's black. That wasn't unusual during storms, but I glanced at the radar screen to my left. No rain. No wind warnings. Clear skies for miles. What's your address? I asked. He gave it. A rural road, I'd only heard of a few times. Sparse houses, long stretches of farmland. All right, sir. Is anyone injured? Have you tried contacting the power company? They're not answering. His voice cracked slightly. It's not just the lights. The air feels wrong. I typed as he spoke, noting the time, 1:12 a.m., and requesting a patrol unit to check on the outage. What do you mean by wrong? I asked. He hesitated. Then, there are shadows in the street. I stopped typing. Shadows? Yes. They're moving. For a second, I thought he meant people. Sir, are you saying there are individuals outside your home? No, he said quickly. Not people. They're tall. Thin. They're darker than the dark around them. My first instinct was to think drugs, maybe alcohol, or even sleep deprivation. But his voice didn't sound erratic. He sounded terrified. They're just walking, he said. Down the road. No sound. I can't see their faces. I don't think they have faces. I swallowed, glancing at the empty chairs around me. I was alone in the building. Are your doors locked? Yes. Stay on the line. Help is on the way. They've been circling, he whispered. They stop sometimes and just look at the house. Or where the house would be. Like they can't see me, but they know I'm here. A faint static bled into the call, a low hiss that made his breathing sound even harsher. I began, but his voice cut over mine. They're closer now. I could hear his floorboards creak through the receiver. He was moving, probably to another room. The static deepened, pulsing in a line like slow, heavy breaths. Sir, I said, where are you inside the house? Upstairs, he replied. They're in the yard. I pressed my pen hard against the desk, my notes turning messy. Stay away from the windows. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, I think they're looking at me. I heard the faint sound of something tapping glass. Slow, rhythmic. Sir, the line went dead. I sat frozen for a moment, staring at the call end message on the screen. I immediately tried calling back. Nothing. No ring, no voicemail. Just dead air. I radioed the nearest patrol unit. They were still at least 15 minutes out. When the other dispatcher came in at 2 a.m., I told her about the call. We looked up the address again, but nothing came back as active in the system. No phone number, no service records. It wasn't impossible in rural areas, but felt wrong. An hour later, the patrol called in. They'd reached the road, but the house number I'd been given didn't exist. The deputy's voice came through the radio, uneasy. We're looking at the spot it should be. There's just an empty field. I didn't say anything at first. My pen was still in my hand, the notes for the call staring back at me. County line, 1:12 a.m., shadows walking. When I asked if there were power lines in the area, the deputy hesitated before answering. Yeah, but the whole stretch is lit. No outages anywhere. I didn't know what to say. By the time my shift ended at 6, I'd convinced myself it was just a prank. Someone messing with the dispatch line. Maybe they'd picked a random stretch of rural road to make it sound real. But as I was clocking out, I glanced at the incident log again. The time of the call, the address, and one more thing. Something I didn't remember typing, and something I know for certain I didn't hear him say. At the very bottom of my notes, in the caller remarks section, were 4 words. They already found you. I don't know how they got there. I didn't tell anyone. That night, I drove home through dark back roads, the sky clouded over. At one point, a streetlight ahead flickered, then went out entirely as I passed beneath it. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and for just a second, I thought I saw shapes in the distance. Tall, thin, moving. By the time I looked again, the road was empty. I didn't sleep that I didn't expect the call to stay with me. But it did. It was still sitting in my chest the next day, like a stone I couldn't cough up. That man's voice, the one from the blackout, it kept replaying in my head. I could still hear the way he whispered shadows, like it was a word he wasn't supposed to say out loud. And the silence after, that empty, dead air. I told myself I'd check the call log before my next shift. Just curiosity, just to see where exactly it had come from. Dispatch calls are all GPS tracked, logged automatically. If you get a rural one, you can usually still get a ping close enough to find a road. But when I pulled it up, there was nothing. The map showed a jagged, gray outline, like the GPS had tried to grab a location but just gave up. A dead signal. I thought maybe it was a glitch. Rural towers sometimes act up. But the part that bothered me, The part that made my stomach twist was that I recognized the area the signal had been trying to lock onto. It was near the town where I grew up. Only not exactly. The map had no name there. No roads. Just a blank beige patch, like someone had deleted it. That was impossible. I zoomed in and out, refreshing it over and over. The same dead space stared back at me. No matter how far I zoomed, I couldn't find a single street name, a single landmark. The more I stared at it, the more my skin crawled. It looked wrong. Like if I drove there, I'd find the horizon just folding in on itself. I was still staring at the screen when my supervisor, Marlene, came up behind me. "Early again?" she said, setting her coffee down. I minimized the map. Couldn't sleep. "You'll get used to the hours," she said, sliding into the chair next to mine. "Calls were light last night, right?" I hesitated. Yeah, no point telling her. The last thing I needed was to sound like one of those rookies who couldn't handle weird calls. By midnight, I'd almost managed to push it out of my head. The calls were steady, but nothing strange. A drunk domestic, a deer hit on the highway, a fire alarm that turned out to be a toaster. And then the line blinked. I patched it through. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, there was no sound. Then breathing. Slow, shaky. I called last night, a man's voice said. I froze. Is this the blackout call? I asked carefully. Yes, he whispered. It's still out. All of it. My mouth went dry. Sir, I'm going to need your location. It's the same place, he cut in. Same street. Sir, you know it, he said. You grew up here. I felt my heart thud hard in my chest. What street? I asked. There was a pause, and then, in that same soft voice, he started naming them. Maple, Grover, Old Creek Lane. My streets. Not just my town streets, my neighborhood streets. But he didn't stop there. He started naming smaller ones. Side roads. The kind of half-paved little back lanes only locals knew. The names tumbled out in this low, steady rhythm. And every single one was real. Every one from my childhood. I just sat there, gripping the receiver, my nails pressing into the plastic. How do you know those? I asked finally. They're here, he said, but they're not on the maps anymore. I glanced at the screen. My GPS was already trying to pin him, and failing. Same dead patch. They're different now, he went on. What do you mean different? They look the same at first. But the houses, he trailed off, breathing hard. The houses aren't right. And the people, they don't walk right. A hiss of static crawled across the line. Sir, they look like you, he said suddenly. Like they're wearing you. The line went dead. I just sat there, staring at the blank patch on the GPS. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen. I didn't tell Marlene. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That some guy in a town that doesn't exist just recited my childhood street names? No. I just finished my shift, went home, and lay awake until the morning light cut through my blinds. But all day, those names echoed in my head. And underneath them, something worse, his voice saying they're wearing you. By the time my next shift rolled around, I had convinced myself it was some kind of sick prank. Someone from home, messing with me. That lasted until 2:14 a.m., when the line blinked again. Same caller ID. Same dead patch. I answered. 911, what's your emergency? They're closer, he whispered. The hair on my arms lifted. I can see your house now. I felt my throat close. I don't live there anymore. Yes, you do, he said softly. Right now. Static swelled. Who are you? I said. Silence. Then, in a voice that was barely more than a breath. I'm you. And the line went dead. That I've worked enough night shifts to know that silence is rarely a good sign. Dispatchers are trained to read between the lines. Not just what callers say, but how they breathe, where they pause, when they go quiet. Silence means something's happening that they don't want to say out loud. That night, the silence wasn't coming from the callers. It was coming from the radios. We'd already been dealing with the blackout town for over an hour. No power. No lights. The GPS said the place didn't exist, but the man on the phone swore he was standing on my childhood street. I'd sent 2 officers in that direction, Harper and Mills, and I'd been clinging to their radio updates like a lifeline. Then the static started. At first, it was just a little interference. A clipped word here, a fuzzy burst there. That happens all the time with rural calls. But then the gaps got longer. Whole minutes without a word from either of them. I kept clicking the mic, asking for location updates. Nothing. Finally, Harper's voice cracked through the static, sharp enough to make me flinch. Dispatch, we're on. The rest dissolved into hissing noise. I tapped my pen against the desk, trying to keep my voice steady. Harper, say again. Where are you? A pause. Then, faintly, Smithfield Avenue. My stomach dropped. That was my street. But Harper didn't know that. I hadn't told anyone here where I grew up. Static swallowed him again before I could reply. I glanced at the other dispatcher on shift, a guy named Dean. He was handling another call and didn't seem to notice that my hands had gone cold. I tried to focus on my screen, mapping their last ping, but the GPS was useless. Blank space. The radio crackled again. This time it was Mills. His voice was tight, like he was holding his breath between words. Dispatch, houses are wrong. That was it. Just that sentence. I pressed the mic. Mills, what do you mean wrong? Another burst of static. Then, more clearly, windows watching us. I froze. I don't know why those words hit me the way they did, but I could picture exactly what he meant. The houses on my street had always looked strange at night. My mom used to say it was the way the power lines cut across the streetlights, making the shadows bend. But I remembered walking home from school and feeling like every curtain had shifted just enough for someone to peek out. The radio went silent again. I told myself they were just spooked. It was a blackout. They were probably using flashlights, and shadows do weird things in the dark. But my heart wouldn't slow down. When the radio came alive again, the voices weren't speaking to me. Harper, left here. No, I swear it was straight ahead. It wasn't here before. It sounded like they were arguing about directions. I kept trying to break in to tell them to stick together, but neither of them acknowledged me. Then Harper's voice cut through, closer, like he was leaning into the mic. Dispatch, how long have you lived here? I stared at the radio, unsure if I'd heard him right. Harper, what are you talking about? I've never. A sharp burst of static interrupted me, so loud it made Dean glance over. When cleared, Mills was speaking again, faster now. Houses aren't empty. Someone's walking. I sat forward, gripping the mic. Do you need backup? Confirm. Too many. Moving wrong shadows are. The hiss swallowed the rest. I realized I'd been holding my breath and let out slowly. Dean was watching me now. I gave him a quick shake of my head, pretending I was fine, but my foot was tapping hard under the desk. 5 minutes passed without another word. That's a lifetime in dispatch. You don't leave your people hanging like that. I was about to call the state police when Harper came back on. His voice was flat this time, like all the air had gone out of him. We see you. I stared at the radio. Repeat last transmission. Static. You're in the window. I jerked upright. Dean mouthed, what? At me, but I didn't answer. Harper and Mills had never seen my face. I wasn't even near them. And yet, before I could say anything, the feed cut to dead air. My headset felt heavy on my head, like it was pulling me forward. I reached for my coffee, but my hand was shaking too much to lift it. Finally, Mills came through again. He sounded like he was whispering into the mic while running. Harper, it's behind us. I hit the button so hard it clicked twice. Mills, what's behind you? Do you need to retreat? No answer. Then, Harper's voice, ragged, breathless. It's right behind you. The words weren't from Mills. They were for me. The radio cut to static, so sharp it hurt my ears. I yanked the headset off and sat frozen. Dean was already reaching for his own set, asking them to respond, but no one did. For the next hour, every attempt to reach them failed. We sent more units, but none could find them. The blackout town was gone. No signs of a crash. No abandoned squad car. Just empty roads and darkness. When my shift ended, I couldn't shake the sound of Harper's voice. The way he'd said it, not like a warning, like a statement, a certainty. It's right behind you. I didn't look over my shoulder until I was in my car with the doors locked. Even then, I didn't see anything, but the mirrors caught something off. Not movement, not a shadow, just a faint impression of someone standing exactly where I'd been sitting inside the dispatch room. Watching me leave, I didn't expect the phone to ring again. Not after what happened with the officers. Not after the last sound that came through the radio, that wet, dragging breath, and that sentence that still makes the back of my neck go cold whenever I think about it. It's right behind you. I've been staring at the silent radio for nearly an hour. The dispatch room was dim. The only light was from the muted monitors and the thin red glow of the desk phone's standby light. Everything outside had gone quiet, too. It wasn't like the usual graveyard shift quiet, where the hum of vending machines and the occasional hum of fluorescent lights filled the space. This was different. The air was heavy, still, like the building itself was holding its breath. Then the phone rang. The sound tore through the silence like a blade. My heart jolted. My hand hesitated above the receiver. I thought, maybe it's the sergeant. Maybe it's someone telling me they found the officers. Maybe it's anything normal. I picked up, but it wasn't normal. There was no introduction, no voice asking for help, no sound of wind or rain or background noise. It was just me, my voice, whispering, the same tone I use when I'm trying not to wake someone in the next room. Soft, steady, but with an edge of urgency. Don't hang up. I froze. My mouth went dry. Who is this? I asked. A pause. Then the same voice, my voice, repeated, don't hang up. The line hissed faintly, like there was static in the background, but no other sounds. No movement. No breathing. I tried again. Who am I speaking to? The whisper didn't answer the question. You can't see them from here. But they're closer now. I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten. The words were wrong. I didn't know what them meant, but the way I said it, the way the voice sounded certain, made my skin crawl. I glanced toward the dark glass window across the room. My reflection looked back at me in the faint monitor light, just a vague outline of my face. I've looked into that window 1,000 times, but tonight it felt deeper. I'm going to hang up, I said, even though I didn't move to. The voice, my voice, didn't get louder, but came faster now. No, you have to listen. You have to remember the corner, the one by the church, the one with the black glass. My stomach nodded. I knew that corner. I hadn't thought about it in years, but it was part of my childhood, a boarded-up shop on the corner of 8th and Mill, across from the old Methodist church. The front window had been shattered long ago, replaced with a sheet of dark, reflective glass. As a kid, I'd avoid walking past it at night because I swore the reflection moved slower than I did. I hadn't been near it since I moved away. How do you know about that? I asked, my voice trembling. The whisper didn't hesitate. Because you told me. On the last night, when it all went black. My fingers tightened around the receiver. I had the sudden urge to cover my other ear, like I could block the words from getting inside my head. What do you mean last night? When was that? Silence. I thought the call had dropped, but then I heard it, faint, almost lost in the static, the sound of footsteps. Slow, crunching on something brittle. Where are you? I asked, my own voice shaky now. The whisper answered, closer than they are, but not for long. My pulse thudded in my ears. I looked at the clock on the wall, the same one I'd checked 100 times tonight. But the hands, they were still stuck at 3:07 a.m., just like they had been for the past. I don't even know how long anymore. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. What's happening? This time, the whisper didn't answer with words. It just breathed. Long, slow breaths. Each one sounded like it was coming from the same place I was. The same air. I looked back at the black window. My reflection wasn't moving right. The head tilt didn't match mine. Its mouth was opening, but I wasn't speaking. Then the whisper said, they're almost here. The line went dead. I stayed frozen in my chair, my eyes locked on the dark glass. My reflection was still there, but something in it had shifted. The head was tilted just slightly too far, like the neck was bending past where it should. I wanted to turn off the lights, to shut down the monitors, to make it all go away. But I couldn't move. My body wouldn't let me. The radio crackled. For the first time in hours, it came to life, but the voice on it was faint, broken by static. Dispatcher, you there? I grabbed the mic, yes. Yes, I'm here. Who is this? Stay away from the glass. The signal cut, replaced with that same hiss. I looked back at the window. My reflection was smiling now. The rest of that night is a blur in my memory. I don't remember leaving the dispatch room. I don't remember driving home. But I do remember one thing. When I got into my car, the clock on the dash read 3:07 a.m. And in the passenger seat, in the faint reflection of the side window, I swear I saw my own lips moving, whispering something I couldn't hear. I've taken a lot of strange calls in my years as a 911 dispatcher. drunks who think they're dying from hiccups, teenagers prank calling about UFOs, even a man who calmly told me his neighbor had turned into a deer and was eating roses in his yard. But this call didn't feel like any of that. It came in on a Tuesday night, the kind of shift where time drips slow, the kind where you can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights over your own breathing. We were short-staffed, as usual. Rain on the highway had kept most of the night busy with fender benders and hydroplane spinouts, but around 2 a.m., it had gone quiet. Too quiet. I was leaning back in my chair, rubbing the ache out of my neck when the phone rang. The sound was the same as every other time, sharp, demanding, a little too loud, but something about the timing made my stomach tighten. I hit the button, headset snug against my ear. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Not the fumbling pause of someone caught off guard. Not the broken sobs of someone trying to find words. Just a deep, steady quiet. I was about to repeat myself when I heard it. Eli, my name. The voice said it exactly the way I say it. Same tone, same weight on the first syllable. Like an echo. Yes, this is Eli, I said slowly. Do you need help? There was a pause. Then, I'm the real one. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe they'd said something close to that. But the more I replayed it in my head, the more certain I became. That's exactly what they'd said. The real what? I asked. The real me, they answered. And then, before I could speak again, you're not me. My chest went cold. It wasn't just that the voice was similar. It was exactly mine. Every breath, every inflection. It sounded like I was listening to a recording of myself, speaking in real time. You've got the wrong number, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. But the voice on the other end let out a quiet laugh, my laugh. The low, almost awkward chuckle I make when something's not funny but I don't know what else to do. I don't have the wrong number, it said. I called me. I glanced toward the corner of the dispatch room, where the clock glowed red, 2:13 a.m. The rain outside tapped against the windows like it was trying to get in. Where are you calling from? I asked. There was a long pause. Too long. And then, you know where. It was such a simple sentence, but hearing it in my own voice, it felt like something had reached into my chest and curled its fingers around my ribs. I started typing into the system, trying to trace the call, but nothing came up. The line wasn't showing a location, not even a blocked ID. It was just blank. That almost never happens. Sir, I said, deciding to treat this like any other potential distress call. If you need help, I can send. You already tried that, the voice cut in. I froze. What do you mean? I mean, you sent them, and they didn't come back. The words hit me like cold water. Who didn't come back? I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. You know, it said again. The weird thing was it didn't sound threatening. It wasn't aggressive or taunting. It was calm, certain, like it really believed what it was saying. I tried another approach. Okay, if you're me, tell me something only I'd know. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the static of the line. Then the voice said, when you were 8, you found your dad's watch in the drawer after the funeral. You wore it to school, but the clasp was too big and it kept sliding off your wrist. You dropped in the mud by the fence and pretended you didn't care, but you went back after dark to look for it. You never found it. I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't told that to anyone. Not my mother, not my brothers. That wasn't something you could find online or guess. That was mine. I should have hung up right then. But I couldn't. How do you know that? I asked. The voice didn't answer the question. It just said, you still think about it sometimes. You still think if you dug there, maybe it'd be waiting. I pressed my hand against my chest. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was about to speak when something shifted on the line, a faint rustle, like movement close to the receiver. The voice came back, quieter this time. You're not supposed to be here. The hair on my arms stood up. What do you mean? You weren't supposed to make it past last winter, it said. That's why I'm here. There was a faint crack in its voice now. Not sadness, not fear, something else. Something that sounded almost impatient. I swallowed hard. I don't know who you are, but I'm you. It said again, sharper this time. And I need you to listen. The clock on the wall ticked over to 2:17. I don't know why I noticed it, but I did. I'm listening, I said. The voice let out a slow breath. I could hear the exhale in my headset, and feel my own chest rise at the same rhythm, like we were breathing together. You can't keep answering, it said. Answering what? The calls, it said simply, and then softer, because one of them isn't going to let you hang up. I didn't even know what to say. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The voice filled the silence. They'll sound like me. They'll sound like you. They'll tell you things you forgot. And when they do, you'll feel that pull. What pull? I managed to go to them, it said. And if you go, it stopped. The line popped with a small burst of static. Then silence. Hello, I said. Hello, are you still there? No answer. I glanced at the call timer, still connected. Listen, if this is some kind of joke. That's when I heard it. Not a voice this time. Breathing. But it wasn't steady. It was mine, exactly as I was breathing right then. The exact same rhythm, the same pauses. Like the sound was folding in on itself. My skin prickled. And then, it whispered, I'm looking at you. My chair scraped against the floor as I turned. The dispatch room was empty. Just the muted glow of the monitors, the slow blink of the server light, the rain streaking the glass. I turned back to the computer. The call log still showed no data. I pressed the button to disconnect the call. The line went dead instantly. For the rest of the shift, I couldn't focus. Every time the phone rang, my stomach dropped, convinced it would be me again. It never was. But I didn't stop thinking about that voice. And the worst part? It was right about the watch. I hadn't thought about it in years. But on the drive home, I caught myself glancing toward that old fence by the school, wondering if the mud might still be hiding something. Something I'd left behind. Something I'd forgotten that I'd been on shift for maybe 3 hours when the first one happened. It was just a normal Tuesday night. Quiet. A little too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think you should be grateful, but somehow just leaves you uneasy instead. I was sipping stale coffee, letting my eyes blur on the computer screen when the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? I said, automatic, my voice steady in the way training drills into you. At first there was nothing, just the faint hiss of the open line. And then I heard it, my own voice. Not an echo, not a glitch. My exact voice, clear as if it were coming from a recorder. The words were too familiar. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my house. They keep walking around the yard, but when I check, they're gone. That wasn't happening now. That was from months ago. Late December, I think. A man named Patrick. He lived out by the old highway. I remembered the fear in his breathing, the way his voice had trembled on the address. And here it was again, playing into my headset word for word. I sat there frozen, my pen hovering over my notepad. The words matched perfectly. Every pause, every nervous inhale. I remembered the call like it had burned itself into my memory, but now it was replaying. And then mid-sentence it cut out. Silence. Hello, I asked, but there was no one. I took off my headset and rubbed my eyes. Glitches happen. Cross lines. Equipment hiccups. Our system is older than some of the dispatchers. I told myself it was nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. The second time, I wasn't alone. Marcy was at the next desk over, and I caught her glance when my shoulders tensed. The line had opened, but before I could speak, I heard myself again. This one was from years ago, back when I was still new, still green enough to believe you could keep this job at arm's length. Please, I need an ambulance. My son, he's not breathing. My voice answering, shaky, less practiced than it is now. I remember that one too. Every dispatcher has one call they can't scrub from their mind. That was mine. A young mother. Alone. Panicked. I remembered sitting there that night, helpless except for my words, coaching her through CPR while she sobbed. The sound of her begging me to tell her it would be okay. And here it was spilling into my ears again. That same desperation, that same old me. I yanked my headset halfway off. Marcy, I hissed. She looked over, startled. Do you hear that? Hear what? She asked. The line went dead. When I told her what I'd heard, she gave me the look we all give each other when someone's been at the desk too long. That mix of sympathy and doubt. The third time it was worse. It was a real emergency this time. A man screaming about someone in his basement. While I took down his address, the line split. That's the only way I can describe it. I could still hear him yelling, his footsteps pounding as he ran upstairs. But under it, faint and distorted, was another voice. My voice. From another night. Another call. I could hear myself saying, "Are you alone in the house? Lock the door. Stay on the line with me." It was like I was holding two conversations at once. One real, one pulled from somewhere in the past. And both of them were me. I started mixing them up. I almost asked the wrong man the wrong question. My brain was trying to untangle which now was the real one. By the time the responding officers reached the address, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 10 minutes straight. My hands were shaking. You have to understand, this wasn't like remembering something. It wasn't a flashback or déjà vu. These were recordings. My own voice. My own words. Playing live over active calls. The only problem was we don't keep tapes like that. Not raw. Not untagged. And we definitely don't feed them back into open lines. I started writing them down. Dates times little details I could remember from the original call. The list started to grow. It was like the past was leaking through. Some were easy to place. The icy February night with the overturned truck, the spring storm where we lost power for hours. But others, I couldn't. That's when it got really bad. Because one night, I heard a call I didn't remember taking. It was me. Definitely me. The tone, the pacing, I would know my own voice anywhere. But the words, can you see it from where you're hiding? A pause. My breath catching. Okay, don't move. Just don't look at its face. I wrote it down anyway, even though I had no memory of it. Maybe it was someone else with a similar voice. Maybe my brain was playing tricks. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The worst part? They started overlapping more. Sometimes I'd get 3 voices at once. The current call, the past call I remembered, and the past call I didn't. It was like being trapped in a hall of mirrors where every reflection was me, and all of them were speaking at once. Marcy stopped asking if I was okay. The others started giving me more coffee runs, more bathroom breaks, little excuses to step away from the board. But every time I came back, it kept happening. Then came last Thursday. Another quiet night. Too quiet. The line clicked open, and before I could say a word, I heard, not one past call, but several. Layered so faintly, I could barely tell them apart. One was the mother with her son. One was Patrick with the man in his yard. One was the unknown one, the voice telling someone not to look at its face. And under them all, faint but clear, was me. Right now me. Saying words I hadn't said yet. It's right behind you. The air in the room felt heavier. I sat there with my pen frozen mid-stroke, waiting, trying to remember if I'd ever said those words before. I hadn't. They were coming for me. But ahead of me, the call ended before I could even check the logs. I pulled the last 2 hours of line activity, but there was nothing. No trace. Like the system never picked them up at all. I told myself it had to be in my head. Stress, fatigue, maybe I was burning out. But when I got home, I found the notepad on my kitchen counter, the one I'd left at work, and written on the top page in my own handwriting, shaky, almost smudged, were the words. It's right behind you. I don't remember writing them. Since then, every call feels like it could split in two at any moment. Every time my headset clicks, I brace for it. The sound of my own voice coming through from somewhere I can't reach, speaking to someone I can't see. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I swear I can hear the faint hiss of the open line in my ear, even with the headset hanging on the hook across the room. I haven't told anyone about the last part, about the handwriting, or about the fact that last night, I heard one more voice come through. Not me, not a caller, just a whisper, stretched thin and low, buried under static. And it wasn't asking for help. It was telling me something. Something I think I'm going to hear again, any day now, in my own voice, on a call that hasn't happened yet that I didn't want to come in that night. Something about the air in the building had felt wrong the past few shifts. The kind of wrong you can't explain. Not to your boss, not even to yourself, because it sounds insane to say the room feels different. But I went in anyway. The dispatch floor was quiet when I arrived, just the hum of computers and the faint scent of burned coffee from a pot that no one had bothered to dump. I signed in, slipped on my headset, and ran through the usual checks. Radio clear, CAD system loaded, emergency lines tested. Nothing fell off until I saw her. She was sitting in my chair. Or, at least, she was sitting where my chair should have been. The layout of our center is simple, a wide horseshoe of stations, each with 3 monitors and a radio console. My spot's on the far left, by the emergency exit. I like it there because it feels less boxed in. She had her back to me at first. Shoulders straight, headset on, her fingers resting lightly over the keyboard like she'd been frozen mid-thought. I said, hey, you're in my seat. She didn't turn. I stepped closer, thinking maybe she was deep in a call, but the screens in front of her weren't lit with any active incident. Just a home screen, waiting. That's when she spoke. I'm here to take over your shift. The voice was mine. Not similar. Not close. Exactly mine. Same tone, same rhythm, like someone had recorded me speaking and was playing it back live. I froze. My brain went blank for a few seconds. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, it wasn't, but because I thought maybe it was a joke. Maybe someone had pulled audio from one of my training tapes and was messing with me. But she turned her head, and she looked like me. Not just the same hair color, kind of look-alike. This was exact. Same shape of my eyes, same little scar on my cheek from when my brother threw a toy truck at me when I was 7. Same tired lines under my eyes from too many overnights. I think I whispered, "What the hell?" She smiled, like she'd been waiting for me to notice. "You're off early tonight," she said. "I've got it from here." For a moment, my brain tried to play along. Sure, fine. Maybe this was some weird HR test. Maybe I was on a prank show. But then I glanced to the other end of the room, where Sarah and Mike were working their stations. "Hey," I called over, tried to sound casual. "Do you see this?" Sarah looked up, brows furrowed. "See what?" "This person." I stopped, because Sarah wasn't looking at her. She was looking directly at me, at the empty space where my double was sitting. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked. I swallowed hard. "Never mind." I turned back to the chair, and she was still there, still smiling. "You should go," she said softly, like a parent coaxing a child to bed. "You've been working too much. I'll handle things from here." My instinct was to dig my heels in. "No, this is my shift. Get out of my seat. You don't have a seat here anymore." The way she said it, calm, matter of fact, made the hair rise on my arms. I reached forward, maybe to grab her shoulder, maybe to shove the chair back. But the second my fingers should have touched fabric, there was nothing. I felt her skin. Not my hand passed through her. Nothing. Like my hand had moved through empty air. Her image flickered for a fraction of a second, like a bad video feed. And in that moment, her eyes weren't mine anymore. They were pitch black. I yanked my hand back. My headset beeped with an incoming 911 call. Without thinking, I dropped into the chair, threw her somehow, and answered. 911, what's your emergency? There was no response. Just static. But underneath it, like someone whispering into a cup, I heard my own voice say, "Let me talk to them." I slammed the line closed. My heart was hammering. Sarah glanced over again. "You good?" I lied. "Yeah, wrong number." The rest of the hour passed in this strange, overlapping haze. Calls came in normally. Car accident, domestic disturbance, suspicious person in a park. But every so often, between the pauses, I'd catch my own voice bleeding into the line. Not repeating what I just said. Not even responding to the same caller. Saying different words. Like there were 2 of me on the system. I kept looking at the space to my right, where my double had been. Sometimes it was empty. Sometimes she was there, leaning forward like she was listening in. At one point, during a quiet stretch, I muted my console and spoke under my breath. "What do you want?" She didn't answer right away. Just kept that faint smile. Then, "They'll see me soon." It was almost a relief when the alarm tone went off for a hot call. Possible armed robbery in progress. Multiple witnesses, suspects still on scene. I patched it through to patrol, my voice steady even though my hand were cold. As I worked the call, I thought I saw movement in my peripheral vision. My double, leaning toward the microphone, like she was ready to speak over me. I turned quickly, but the chair beside me was empty again. Dispatching is all about control. You're the calm voice in the chaos. You can't afford to lose focus. But that night, I wasn't in control. Not of the lines. Not my own voice. Maybe not even of my own body. Near the end of my shift, I decided I couldn't just ignore it. I needed proof. Something I could show the others. So I set my phone to record and placed it on the desk, angled toward the empty chair. I spoke into the mic for the next routine welfare check, all while keeping one eye on the chair. For the first few minutes, nothing. Then, as I was confirming an address, I saw her again, sliding into the seat, headset in place. Only, this time she wasn't looking at me. She was looking directly into the computer screen, and she was speaking. My phone picked up her voice. My voice. The recording sounded like an echo of what I just said to the caller, but slightly off, with different inflection, different pacing. Like she was retelling my conversation to someone else. I reached for my phone to stop recording. When I looked back up, she was gone. I checked the recording right there at the desk. The audio was perfect, too perfect. My voice was crystal clear, but there was no background noise, no hum of the dispatch floor, no clacking keyboards. Just me, alone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I didn't tell Sarah or Mike when I left that night. I didn't tell anyone. I just saved the recording, locked my phone, and went home. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling in my head, refusing to let me sleep. If she's here to take over my shift, what happens when she finally does? By the time my shift was winding down, I'd already made up my mind that I wasn't coming back. I've been telling myself that all night, whispering it in the quiet between calls, letting the thoughts settle and like a promise I could actually keep. But deep down, I knew I'd still be here tomorrow. That's how this place works. You tell yourself it's just a job, that the chair and the headset and the flickering monitor don't own you. But the truth is, once you sit here long enough, it starts to feel like you belong to it. The hum of the computers, the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead, the subtle smell of burnt dust from the heating vents. All of it burrows into you until the outside world feels thinner, like it's the dream. In this place, the dispatch room, the ringing, the voices is what's real. It was 5:42 a.m., almost sunrise. The window in the corner was turning faintly blue, the kind of cold light that makes everything look drained of color. The other dispatchers were quiet, each in their own little glass cubicle of exhaustion. I could hear keys clicking, muffled coughs, the occasional sigh. I was just trying to keep my eyes open when my line lit up. It wasn't unusual to get a call right before shift change. People don't wait for convenient hours to have emergencies. But when I saw the number flash across the screen, my stomach went cold. No area code. No number at all. Just unknown. That's not impossible. Block calls happen. But this wasn't the usual format. No zeros, no private number. Just the word unknown, sharp and clean, like it had been typed into the system by hand. I should have let it roll to another line. I should have let someone else deal with it. But my hand moved before I could think. I picked up, 911. What's your emergency? At first, nothing. Just that faint open line hum. The tiny background hiss you get when a connection's live, but no one's talking. Hello. I tried again. This is County Dispatch. Do you need... And then I heard it. My own voice. Hang up, it said. It wasn't a recording. I knew my voice. I knew the small, tight strain in it. The way my vowels tilt a little sharper when I'm under stress. I could hear the air in my lungs, the slight catch in my breathing. It was me. Hang up now, my voice repeated. My throat went dry. Who is this? The pause that followed felt deliberate. Like whoever, whatever, this was wanting me to lean in, to give them that space. You know who I am, it said. It sounded like I was hearing myself through a glass wall. Every syllable was familiar, but slightly warped. Like it had traveled too far to get here. I thought about all the other calls. The man who spoke in my voice. The phantom recordings of old emergencies bleeding into live lines. The me, who came to take over my shift while everyone swore no one was sitting in my chair. This wasn't the start of something new. It was the end of it. I'm telling you to hang up, the voice said again, sharper this time. Before it's too late. My eyes flicked to the clock on my console, 5:44 a.m. Too late for what? I asked because I couldn't help myself. Silence. Then, you won't hear the difference yet, but you will. I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't want to. I hovered over the disconnect key. My thumb felt stiff, like I'd have to force it down. This is a recorded line, I said, more out of habit than anything. My voice sounded thin, strained. If you're in danger, I am. The voice cut in. Something about the way it said that made the hair on my arms rise. It wasn't scared. It was warning me. You're not supposed to still be here, it said. She's coming. I swallowed hard. Ooh, but my voice, the other me, didn't answer. It just breathed for a few seconds. Long, slow breaths, perfectly in sync with my own without me even trying. I didn't realize I was matching it until I stopped. And the other me stopped too. I swear to you, I felt something shift in the room. Like the air was heavier. Like the sound from the other dispatchers, the typing, the muted conversations, had pulled back just enough to make me feel alone. I thought about looking over my shoulder. I didn't. You need to hang up, my voice said again, softer this time. She's here. That was when I heard it. Not over the phone, in the room. Footsteps. Slow. Light. Just behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I said hang up, my voice hissed. I don't remember making the choice, but suddenly my thumb slammed the disconnect key. The line went dead with a faint click, and the sound behind me stopped. For a long time, I just sat there, my headset still pressing against my ears, the dial tone humming like a warning I couldn't quite make out. The clock read 5:47. 3 minutes until shift change. I didn't take another call. I didn't even move. When a morning crew came in, I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out without saying a word. No one stopped me. No one even looked at me. I don't think I'll be back tomorrow. But like I said, that's what I told myself last time too. When you've worked long enough as a dispatcher, you start to recognize patterns. Not just the obvious ones, like the spikes on weekends when the bars close, or the way certain neighborhoods call more than others, but deeper patterns. The way voices change when someone knows they're about to die. The pauses between words when they're trying to hide something. Even the faint background, noises you only learn to notice after years of listening. You think you've heard it all, until the night you hear the exact same thing twice. It was a Monday night. Quiet, so far. Our shift had been slow enough that I'd spent the last half hour staring at the little cracks in my desk, tracing them with my finger, wondering if I could still see the shape of the water stain that looked like a rabbit. I've been working dispatch for 7 years, and even now, I sometimes caught myself zoning out like that, just long enough for the phone to jolt me back into the real world. At 12:14 a.m., the line lit up. I put on my headset, pressing the receiver tight to my ear. 911, what's your emergency? There was a man on the other end, middle-aged by the sound of him. His voice was fast, shaky, panic buried under a thin layer of force control. Why? There's a fire, he said. It's God, it's moving fast. My wife, she's upstairs. She's stuck. I started typing as he spoke. Address? He gave it to me. A house on East Marlowe Street. I knew the area. Old homes. Lots of dry wood. Perfect for a fire to eat through. Sir, is the fire blocking your exit? I asked. Yeah. The stairs are, oh my God, it's coming up the wall. His voice cracked, the sound of someone losing the fight to keep calm. I told him help was on the way, keeping my voice steady, pulling every bit of procedure into place like muscle memory. Stay on the line. Keep low to the ground. Close the door to the room you're in. Block any gaps with a towel or shirt. In the background, I could hear the fire, that strange, muffled roar, and the faint cough of a woman. Sir, what's your wife's name? I asked, still typing. Carla, he said quickly. Carla, please. I heard a crash, then his breathing got louder in the phone, like he was crouching closer to it. I kept him talking until the firefighters confirmed they'd arrived. By the time they were on scene, I could hear the shouts of their voices through his receiver. I told him to go toward the sound. Then the line went dead. I sat back, rubbing my face. Calls like that leave you heavy. You can't just shake them off. You carry them for the rest of your shift, maybe the rest of the week. 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. I answered it without thinking. 911, what's your emergency? And then, there's a fire. It's God, it's moving fast. My wife, she's upstairs. She's stuck. I froze. It wasn't just another fire. It was the same voice. The same man. The same exact words. Same stutter at the start. Same desperate edge in his breathing. Address? I asked, my voice quieter now, and he gave it. The same house on East Marlowe Street. I felt my throat tighten. The fire crews were still out there. I could see on the incident board. This shouldn't be possible. I tried to steady myself. Sir, is the fire blocking your exit? Yeah, the stairs are, oh my God, it's coming up the wall. The same break in his voice. The same sound of fire in the background. Even the cough. It was like listening to a recording. Word for word. Breath for breath. I don't know why I didn't tell him. Why I didn't say, I just talked to you. Instead, I kept going, reciting the same instructions, my hands barely moving on the keyboard. Every part of me felt cold. And then, the crash. The shift in his breathing. The name Carla in the same panicked tone. When the line cut off, I sat there staring at my screen. The timestamp on the call was exactly 12:14 a.m. again. Same minute. Same second. I didn't tell anyone right away. Part of me thought maybe I'd miss her the first call, that maybe the second was just some horrible coincidence. But I knew better. Dispatchers know voices. We have to. And I was sure, in that deep, gut-level way you're sure the sun's gonna rise, that I had just answered the same emergency twice. The fire crew reported back 20 minutes later. The house was gone. The man didn't make it out. Neither did Carla. That should have been the end of it. A tragedy, yes, but a tragedy with an explanation. Except, when I went to log the calls, something was wrong. The first call's audio file was there in the system. But when I clicked it, I didn't hear the first one. I heard the second. Identical. Down to the second. It was like the first had been erased, replaced by the repeat. I sat there listening, my head set tight against my ears, and for the first time in my career, I realized I didn't know how to write the report. Because if I told the truth, if I said what actually happened, I'd sound crazy. And yet, I could still hear it in my head. That first call, the real first call, the one that's gone now, the man's voice, the weight in it, the fear that wasn't just about the fire. Fear like, he knew it was coming again, that I thought the first time was strange. The second time, unsettling. But the third time? That's when it became impossible to pretend I was imagining it. It was 2:04 a.m. when the phone rang again. Same number as before. Same faint, tinny hiss of static in the line. My stomach tightened, but I still gave my standard greeting. 911. What's your emergency? The voice came exactly as I remembered. Same tone. Same shallow panic, trying to sound brave. My name's Grant Easton. My house is on fire. I don't know, it's coming from the walls. Please send someone. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen. The words weren't similar to last time. They were exact. Same phrasing. Same quick inhale before please. And my mind didn't need to work to remember. 15 minutes ago, I'd been sitting in this same chair, wearing the same sweater, holding the same headset against my ear, listening to this exact same man describe this exact same fire. I glanced toward dispatch 2, Mike, who was halfway through a call about a highway crash. His tone was normal, his focus absolute. I could hear his muffled voice under mine. No one else was reacting. I swallowed and tried to keep my voice steady. Mr. Easton, I paused, my eyes flicking to the CAD screen in front of me. The first report was still there. 2:49 a.m. House fire, rural zone, County 11. Crews dispatched. Call closed as on scene. We'd already sent trucks. We'd already handled this. Mr. Easton, I said again, trying to think. We've already sent. No. He interrupted, voice breaking now. I just called now. You have to hurry. I could feel my pulse in my throat. What's your address? 42 County 11. He said it like it was the first time he'd spoken it. Like it wasn't already in the system from 15 minutes ago. Something inside me wanted to argue, to tell him this was wrong. But training is like muscle memory. You follow the flow because anything else feels like drowning. I repeated his address, confirmed the nature of the fire, and typed it in again. County Fire, this is Central Dispatch. I switched over to the fire channel, voice tight. Possible second incident, same as last. Can you confirm your status at 42 County 11? There was a pause. Too long of one. Finally, Central, we're clear on that. We're staged in Zone 6 now. Stage. I repeated. Yeah, we will. There's no structure there. Zone mapping says it's just wooded county land. My skin prickled. Negative. Engine 3. Caller reports residential structure fully involved. Same location as last incident. Another pause. Longer. A crackle of static. And then, Central. That location's a dirt clearing. We swept the whole perimeter. No house. No debris. Nothing burning. I stared at the glowing CAD map. It was marked exactly where Grant said it was, a small icon for structure fire pinned to an empty stretch of road. The last call, the exact same call, the one I heard. We'd sent men to a fire that didn't exist, and now it was happening again. I didn't know if I should feel stupid for not asking the obvious question sooner. I hit the line mute, took a breath, and came back to Grant. Mr. Easton, can you tell me what you see right now? I told you, there's fire in the walls. It's hot, so hot, he coughed. I heard wood groaning somewhere behind him, and a faint, high-pitched squeal like nails being pulled from beams. He cut off. I thought the line had dropped until I heard a whisper. Something's in the smoke. My arm hairs lifted. Mr. Easton, I need you to evacuate immediately. No, it's in the smoke, he insisted. It's moving. The line went dead. Static. Silence. I just sat there, listening to my own breath in the headset. Then I looked back at Mike, who was hanging up his call. I thought about telling him. I didn't. Instead, I logged the call exactly as protocol demanded. Details, timestamps, the works. I didn't mention the duplicate. I didn't mention the phantom address. It should have been over. It wasn't. Because at 2:19, the phone rang again. Same number. The same hollow static. 911. What's your emergency? And his voice, came again. My name's Grant Easton. My house is on fire. I don't know, it's coming from the walls. Please send someone. I went cold all over. The pen in my hand rolled off the desk and clattered to the floor. This wasn't deja vu is a trick of memory. This was an event replaying itself with mechanical precision. I don't know why, but I tried something different this time. Grant, what year is it? There was a pause on the line. Not long, but enough. 2024. I froze. That was last year. I stared at the digital clock on my console. 2:19 a.m., February 8th, 2025. Grant, I said, what's today's date? Another pause. February 8th, 24. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, as if even he heard it wasn't right. I felt this sinking, hollow feeling in my gut, like I just looked over the edge of a building and leaned too far. I put the call on hold and patched fire again. Central to Engine 3. Do you have any record of Structure 42 County 11 existing in the past? The answer came slow, uncertain. Negative, Central. That road's been undeveloped since. He stopped mid-sentence. A small click of the mic, like he'd almost said too much. Negative, Central. Over. When I came back to the line, Grant's voice was different. Not frantic, not even afraid. I can see you, he said softly. Every nerve in me went rigid. What? You're at a desk. You're wearing a gray sweater. You got your hair pulled back. There's a coffee cup near your right hand, but you haven't taken a sip in an hour. My mouth went dry. How do you know that? You haven't looked at the window behind you. I didn't. I couldn't. My pulse was hammering. I didn't think it would be you, he whispered. I thought it would be me. The line went dead again. I sat there, headset still against my ear, staring straight ahead like if I didn't move, reality would settle back into place. But nothing about that moment ever felt real again. The fire crew filed a report the next day. No structure, no signs of fire, no human presence. But I still had 3 separate incident numbers in the system, all attached to the same name and phone number. And that number? It's not in service. It hasn't been in service for over a year. I noticed it in the corner of my first. Not in some big dramatic way. Just a flicker. I was mid-sentence, logging the notes from a welfare check call, when something made me glance up at the clock above the call floor. It said 3:07 a.m., which wasn't strange in itself. It was late, or early. My shift runs through the kind of hours where numbers on a clock barely feel real anymore. But what pulled my attention was how long I'd been looking at it. 1 second turned into 5. 5 turned into 10. And the second hand wasn't moving. It sat there, stiff and still, like it had frozen mid-step. I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe the battery had died, or someone had just forgotten to fix it. But then I looked over at the smaller wall clock above the break room door. 3:07 a.m., and that second hand wasn't moving either. I craned my neck, scanning the room. Dispatch is a rectangular space. Long rows of desks, each with a headset, 2 or 3 monitors, the low hum of servers against one wall. Every workstation has its own little digital clock, synced with dispatch time. My monitor said 3072. No blinking colon. No seconds changing. Just fixed. Hey. I called softly toward Amber, 2 desks down. What time you got? She didn't even glance at me. 3:07. Her tone was casual, like she hadn't noticed. But then I saw her eyes flick to her own clock. And then flick again. Mine stuck, I said. Her brows pulled together. Yeah, mine too. We both turned toward the far end of the room, where Steve, the shift lead, was leaning back his chair, flipping through some incident reports. He noticed us looking. What? He asked. Amber gestured at her monitor. Time's frozen. Steve frowned, pulled his wrist up to check his watch. He froze. Slowly, he lowered his hand to the desk. That's weird, he murmured. Before we could press it further, the phones rang. That sound, it's sharp, mechanical, and impossible to ignore. In dispatch, no matter what's happening, you pick up. So we did. It was me, Amber, and Mike who answered. 3 separate lines. 3 separate calls. But all 3 were the same. I didn't realize it immediately. The voices were different. But the words were exact. There's a fire, my caller said, breathless. 2-story house, corner of Valley and Ash. My kids are upstairs, please hurry. I knew that address. Or rather, I knew that call. We'd gotten it earlier tonight. Twice. In the fire department, they'd already told us the house didn't exist. My skin went cold. I pushed through protocol anyway. Asked the same verifying questions, the same calm, steady tone. The caller gave me the same answers. Word for word. Even the pauses. When I glanced up, Amber was staring at me with wide eyes. Her lips were moving, silently repeating her caller's words as they came in. We were hearing the same script. Mike muttered something into his headset, ripped it off, and just stared at the phone like it had bitten him. Steve stood up. Hang up, he said. We all hesitated. I said hang up. We did. One by one. The phones went dead. The room went quiet. And then, they started ringing again. Same 3 lines. I didn't answer this time. Neither did Amber or Mike. But the sound drilled into my head, that shrill, steady pulse. Line 3, Steve barked. Take it. I shook my head. It's the same call. He stared at me, and for the first time tonight, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Not annoyance, not authority, nervousness. Phones don't ring if there's no one there, he said. But we both knew that wasn't true. Not here. Not tonight. Because while those phones kept screaming for us, every clock in the room still read 3:07 a.m. Time didn't stop for us. I mean, we were still breathing, still moving, still thinking. But in every measurable way, the world was stuck. Calls still came in, but the second hand never moved. After about 15 minutes, not real minutes, but what felt like them, the phone lights went dark. The ringing stopped. We exhaled. Amber even laughed a little, that thin kind of laugh you use when you're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mike muttered something about a system glitch and rolled his chair back to his desk. I kept staring at the clock. It was still 3:07. I thought about checking my phone. I didn't. Something deep in me didn't want to know if it was stuck too. I don't know how long the quiet lasted. It was enough that I started thinking maybe it was over. Then line 5 lit up. Just one this time. I reached for it before I could think better of it. 911. What's your emergency? For a second, there was only static. Then, there's a fire. My grip on the receiver tightened. 2-story house, corner of Valley and Ash. My kids are upstairs, please hurry. I didn't say anything. The voice on the line, it was mine. Every syllable, every inflection. It wasn't a recording. I could hear breath. I could hear the tiny throat clicks when I swallowed. It was me, but the version of me on the other end wasn't calm. She sounded hollow, like the words weren't hers anymore. I almost hung up, but I didn't. She kept going. 2-story house, Valley and Ash. I whispered into the phone. Who are you? She stopped. A long pause. Then she said, check the clock. I turned my head. 3:07 a.m. I said, it hasn't moved. She said it will, when you stop answering. And then the line went dead. The rest of the shift, if you can even call it that, was a blur. None of the clocks changed. We stopped answering calls after that. The lights would flash, the phones would wail, and we'd just sit there, frozen like the clocks. Eventually, though I can't tell you how long, there was a sound. A tiny click. I looked up. The second hand on the main clock twitched. Then it moved. 3:08 a.m. Amber gasped. Mike swore under his breath. Steve sat down without a word. The phone stayed silent. The lights dimmed back to normal. And for the first time all night, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were back in the real world. I haven't told anyone outside dispatch. Not the chief, not my family. Because what do you even say? Hey, Tom stopped at work last night. And I answered a call from myself. Even now, part of me wants to believe it was some shared hallucination. Sleep deprivation, stress, electrical interference, whatever. But then I remember her voice. My voice. And the way she told me to stop answering. Because now, every time the clock hits 3:07 a.m., I find myself staring at the phone, waiting that I didn't think silence could be loud until that night. It's strange how you can work in dispatch for years, surrounded by noise, chatter from the floor, keys tapping, radios crackling, phones ringing. And then when it all stops, you realize just how much you've been leaning on it. Like background music you didn't notice was keeping you from thinking too hard. At 3:07 a.m., the ringing stopped. Not just for me, but for the whole floor. The others, Kelly, Mark, even Rivas in the corner, they all froze like me, staring at their phones, waiting for the next one to light up. We've been running constant calls for hours. Same incident over and over. Same voices. Same words. And then, nothing. It was like the city had decided to hold its breath. I remember feeling both relieved and uneasy at the same time, like getting out of a storm, but realizing you're still in the middle of the ocean. Kelly broke the quiet first. Lines must be down, she muttered, but it sounded forced. She was fiddling with her headset cord like it was a nervous tick. Mark checked the main board. Everything's green. No outages. No one wanted to say what we were all thinking, that maybe we'd finally hit the bottom of whatever this was. That maybe the loop of repeating calls had ended. I wanted to believe that too. But deep down, I knew we weren't done. I kept my headset on, even though I could have taken it off and stretched my neck for the first time in hours. My shift technically had 40 minutes left. I wasn't about to spend them getting blindsided. For a long time, nothing happened. I glanced at the wall clock. Still 3:07 a.m., the same frozen time it had been since this started. But my watch said it was pushing 4. I don't remember what I was thinking about when the line lit up. I just remember the color of the light, pale green, like the glow of a street light through fog. It was one of our emergency lines, and it was for me. I don't mean it was assigned to my station. I mean the caller ID, the system we use to log every incoming number, displayed my own extension. My phone. Must be a glitch, I told myself out loud, as if saying it would make it true. Kelly looked over. You gonna answer that? I nodded slowly and hit the key. 911. What's your emergency? At first, there was nothing. No voice. No breathing. Just a faint hiss, like air moving in a long, narrow tunnel. Hello. My own voice sounded too loud in my ears. The hiss didn't stop. I tried again. This is dispatch. Can you hear me? And then I heard it. Not a voice exactly, but breathing. Slow, uneven, drawn out between pauses. It didn't sound far from the receiver. It didn't sound recorded. It sounded alive. I know what my own breathing sounds like. I've listened to hours of recorded calls for training, my voice echoing back at me with that slight headset distortion. This was mine. Not just similar, identical. Even the small catch in my inhale, the one I've had ever since that winter flu years ago, it was there. I froze. I didn't even breathe, just to see if the sound on the line would stop too. It didn't. It kept going. That's when my stomach dropped. Because if it wasn't mimicking me in real time, that meant it wasn't just some weird feedback loop. It was something else. I swallowed hard. My voice came out quieter than I meant. Who is this? No answer. Just that steady breathing. I pulled the mic away from my mouth and whispered to Kelly, run a trace on this line. She gave me a look like she didn't want to, but she did it anyway. While she worked, I kept the call open. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought whoever or whatever was on the other end would slip up, say something, reveal something. The hiss grew louder for a moment, like the mic was brushing against fabric. Then, finally, a voice. My voice. Hang up, it said. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. It repeated itself. Hang up before it's too late. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't screaming. It was calm, measured, like I was telling myself to take my own advice. Kelly's voice cut through in my other ear. Trace is back. She hesitated before saying the rest. It's your console. I turned to look at my monitor. It was still live, the waveform on the recording bouncing in perfect rhythm with a faint hiss. The me on the line spoke again. You're still here. I found my voice somehow. Why wouldn't I be? The line crackled. Because you shouldn't be. It felt like someone had just pushed ice water into my veins. I wanted to hang up. Every nerve in my hand screamed for me to hang up. But I didn't. I don't even know why. Where are you? I asked. The other me took a long breath. I could hear the chair creak, the faint hum of the dispatch floor behind it. I'm right where you are, it said. Only further. I wanted to ask what that meant, but my throat locked up. The other me didn't wait. You've already taken a last call. You just don't know it yet. I glanced at the wall clock again. Still 3:07. The frozen hands mocking me. Somewhere, deep in the building, a single phone started ringing. Not here on the floor. Not in reach. One of the old ones. The ones in storage. The me on the line whispered, "That's for you. Don't answer it." Then the call dropped. Just like that. No click, no goodbye, just dead air. Kelly leaned toward me. What the hell was that? I couldn't answer. My eyes were locked on the far hallway, the one that led to the back storage room. The ringing was still going. Slow. Patient. Like it knew I'd come. And I did.